Ethan Cole stood frozen in the doorway of his CEO's office at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, his hand still gripping the door handle. Sophia Bennett sat behind her desk with her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. For one terrible second, he thought she was crying because of him, that he'd done something wrong, crossed some invisible line he didn't know existed. Then she looked up, and he saw something worse than anger in her eyes. Pure fear. "We have 16 hours," she said, her voice cracking. 16 hours before Victor Langford destroys everything I've built. If you want to see how a single father and a terrified CEO fought back against corporate sabotage, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Ethan had learned to recognize the specific quality of silence that meant his daughter was pretending to be asleep. It was different from actual sleep, slightly too still, breathing just a fraction too controlled. He stood in the doorway of her bedroom, backpack already slung over one shoulder, watching the suspicious stillness of the blanket-covered lump in her bed. "I know you're awake, Emma." The lump didn't move. "I can see your toe wiggling." A small foot immediately went still. Then, after a long pause, a 7-year-old face emerged from under the covers, brown hair sticking up in 17 different directions. "How do you always know?" "Superpowers." Ethan crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed. "What's wrong?" Emma sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. "You're leaving really early again." "I have to be at work by 6. We talked about this yesterday, remember? Mrs. Chen is coming at 5:30 to make you breakfast." "I know." Emma picked at a loose thread on her blanket. "But you're always leaving early now, or staying late, or both." The guilt hit him in the chest like it always did, sharp and familiar. 3 months ago, he'd been promoted to senior zoning compliance specialist, which sounded impressive and came with a salary increase that meant Emma could finally take those art classes she wanted. What it actually meant was longer hours, bigger projects, and a constant low-grade panic that he was failing at the only job that truly mattered. "I know," he said quietly. "It's temporary. This big project we're working on, the Riverside thing, it's taking up a lot of time right now, but once it's done, you'll have another big project." Emma wasn't accusing him. She was just stating a fact, which somehow made it worse. "It's okay, Dad. I get it. You have to work." Ethan pulled her into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "You're too understanding for a 7-year-old. It's unsettling." That got a small laugh. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm mature for my age." "Mrs. Patterson is your teacher. She has to say nice things." He pulled back, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "But she's also right. You are pretty amazing." Emma studied his face with the unnerving intensity that sometimes made him forget she was only 7. "Do you like your job?" The question caught him off guard. Yeah, most of the time. Why?" "You always look tired." "That's just my face." "No, it's not." She tilted her head. "You looked different before. In the pictures with Mom." Ethan's chest tightened. They didn't talk about Sarah much anymore. Not because he'd forbidden it or because Emma had forgotten, but because 3 years was long enough for the daily, crushing grief to settle into something quieter. Something that lived in the spaces between normal moments instead of drowning them completely. "That was a long time ago, sweetheart." "I know." Emma played with the edge of her blanket again. "I just want you to look happy again. Not just when you're with me. All the time." He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to explain that happiness felt like something that had happened to someone else, in a different life. That most days he wasn't trying to be happy. He was just trying to survive. Trying to make sure Emma had everything she needed. Trying to hold down a job that would give her opportunities. Trying to be enough. "I'll work on it," he said finally. "Deal?" "Deal." Emma held out her pinky finger, and they hooked pinkies with the same solemn ceremony they used for all important agreements. "Now go to work before you're late." "Yes, ma'am." He kissed her forehead, grabbed his backpack, and headed for the door. He was halfway down the hallway when her voice stopped him. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I love you even when you're tired." The words hit him harder than they should have. "Love you too, Em. Always." The offices of Bennett Development occupied the top 6 floors of a glass tower in downtown Denver. At 6 in the morning, the building was mostly empty except for security guards and the handful of obsessive workaholics who treated their desks like second homes. Ethan had never understood those people before his promotion. Now he was becoming one of them. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor, nodding at Tom, the security guard who'd been working the morning shift for as long as Ethan had been with the company. "Early bird again," Tom said cheerfully. "The worm won't catch itself." "That's not how that's saying. You know what? Never mind." Tom grinned. "Coffee's fresh in the break room. Linda from accounting made it extra strong today." "Linda's a saint." His office was small, 1 window, 1 desk, 2 chairs that had seen better days, and a filing cabinet that refused to close properly no matter how many times maintenance looked at it. The walls were bare except for a single-framed photo of Emma from her 6th birthday party, chocolate cake smeared across her face, gap-toothed smile bright enough to light up the whole room. Ethan dropped his backpack on the desk and pulled out the stack of files he'd taken home the night before. The Riverside project was the biggest development Bennett had ever attempted. A $1 billion mixed-use complex along the South Platte River that would include residential towers, commercial space, public parks, and a massive renovation of the existing waterfront. If it succeeded, it would transform that entire section of the city. If it failed, the company would likely go under. No pressure. His job was to make sure every single aspect of the development complied with Denver's zoning regulations, environmental laws, building codes, and about 17,000 other requirements that seemed designed specifically to make his life difficult. For the past 6 months, he'd been working 18-hour days to prepare for the final city council approval hearing, which was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Morning. Ethan sat down, opened the first file, and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety in his stomach. He'd been working for maybe 40 minutes when his desk phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and frowned. Sophia Bennett, the CEO, calling him directly at 6:45 in the morning. That couldn't be good. "Ethan Cole," he answered. "I need you in my office." Sophia's voice was clipped, professional, but he caught something underneath it, something that sounded almost like panic. "Now, please." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone for a moment, then grabbed his notebook and headed for the elevator. Sophia's office was on the top floor, a massive corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. He'd only been up there a handful of times, usually for company-wide meetings or presentations. Never alone. Never at this hour. The elevator ride felt too long and too short at the same time. When the doors opened, he stepped into a reception area that was empty except for the soft glow of the sunrise through the windows. Sophia's assistant wouldn't arrive for another hour. The door to Sophia's office was slightly ajar. Ethan knocked anyway. "Come in." He pushed the door open and immediately knew something was very wrong. Sophia sat behind her desk, but the woman who looked up at him bore almost no resemblance to the poised, confident CEO he'd seen giving presentations to investors and city officials. Her usually perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wasn't wearing her suit jacket. Her eyes were red-rimmed and her hands were shaking as she gripped the edge of her desk. For a fraction of a second, Ethan's brain offered a completely inappropriate thought. She's beautiful, even like this. He shoved it away immediately, horrified at himself. "Close the door," Sophia said. He did. "Sit down." He sat in one of the leather chairs across from her desk, notebook balanced on his knee, trying to look professional and competent, and like he absolutely had not just noticed how vulnerable she looked. Sophia took a breath. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room until I say otherwise. Understood?" "Yes." "I'm serious, Ethan. Not your team, not Marcus and legal. Nobody." "I understand." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she pushed a manila folder across the desk toward him. "Read that." Ethan opened the folder. Inside was a formal complaint filed with the City Council's Planning Commission, signed by Victor Langford, the CEO of Langford Industries, one of Bennett Development's biggest competitors. The complaint alleged that the Riverside project violated multiple environmental regulations, specifically claiming that the development site contained protected wetlands that Bennett had failed to disclose in their initial assessment. The complaint was dated yesterday. The city council hearing was tomorrow morning. "This is bullshit," Ethan said, then immediately regretted his language. I'm sorry. I mean, no, you're right. It is bullshit. Sophia's voice was hard. There are no wetlands on that property. We had 3 independent environmental assessments done. All of them cleared. Victor knows that. So he's lying. He's not just lying, he's trying to destroy us. Sophia stood up, walking to the windows. With her back to him, silhouetted against the sunrise, she looked very small and very alone. The hearing is in less than 24 hours. If Victor convinces the council that we're hiding environmental violations, they'll shut down the entire project. We'll lose everything: the investors, the contracts, the commercial tenants who've already signed leases. The company won't survive it. Ethan looked down at the complaint again, his mind already racing through the implications. You need me to prepare a response. I need you to help me save my company. Sophia turned to face him. Victor didn't file this yesterday by accident. He waited until the absolute last minute so we'd have the least amount of time to prepare a defense. He's banking on us being caught off guard, scrambling, unable to put together a coherent response before the hearing. Are there other people working on this? Legal team? Environmental consultants? Marcus is pulling everything he can find on environmental compliance law. I've got calls out to the environmental firms we used for the original assessments. But Ethan, she paused, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked slightly. You know this project better than anyone. You've been living and breathing zoning compliance for 6 months. If there's a way to prove Victor's lying, you're the one who's going to find it. The weight of what she was asking settled over him like a physical thing. He thought about Emma, asleep in her bed, about Mrs. Chen, who would wake her up in a few hours and make her breakfast and take her to school, about the promise he'd made to work on looking happy again. What do you need me to do? He asked. Relief flashed across Sophia's face. Everything. I need you to go through every single document we have on that property. Environmental reports, geological surveys, historical records, satellite imagery, everything. I need you to find proof that those wetlands don't exist and never existed. And I need you to help me build a defense strong enough that Victor can't wiggle out of it when we present at the hearing. That's a lot of work for one night. I know. Sophia's expression shifted into something that looked almost like guilt. I know what I'm asking. If you can't, I didn't say I couldn't. Ethan stood up, already mentally cataloging where all the relevant files were stored. I'm just saying we should probably order food. It's going to be a long night. Something changed in Sophia's expression. The fear didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else, something that looked like hope. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. No, Sophia said quietly, but at least now we have a chance. By 8 o'clock, the conference room on the 24th floor looked like a bomb had gone off in a filing cabinet. Documents covered every surface: the table, the chairs, the floor, environmental impact reports, geological surveys, zoning maps, historical property records going back 50 years, engineering diagrams, water table analyses, soil composition studies. Ethan had commandeered an entire wall of whiteboards and was using them to create a timeline of the property's history, looking for any possible documentation that could prove Victor's wetlands claim was fabricated. Sophia sat across the table from him, laptop open, working through a mountain of emails from the environmental consultants who'd done the original assessments. She'd rolled up the sleeves of her white blouse and kicked off her heels an hour ago. Somewhere along the way, she'd let her hair down, and it fell around her shoulders in a way that Ethan was definitely not noticing. Okay, he said, capping his marker. Walk me through the wetlands claim. What exactly is Victor alleging? Sophia pulled up a document on her laptop. He's claiming there's a protected seasonal wetland in the northeast corner of the property. According to his complaint, it floods during spring runoff and provides habitat for migratory birds. He's saying we deliberately omitted it from our environmental impact reports to avoid having to redesign the entire development. And we're sure it doesn't exist? Positive. I've walked that property myself a dozen times. There's no wetland, no flooding, no bird habitat. It's a flat, empty lot that used to be a manufacturing plant back in the 80s. Ethan pulled up a satellite image on his own laptop, studying the northeast corner of the property. What was manufactured there? Industrial pumps, I think? The building was demolished in the 90s. The site's been vacant ever since. And you had environmental testing done for contamination? 3 times. All clear. Sophia rubbed her eyes. Look, I know how this works. Victor doesn't need the wetlands to actually exist. He just needs to create enough doubt that the city council decides to postpone the approval until they can do their own independent assessment. A postponement kills us just as effectively as an outright rejection. Ethan sat back in his chair, thinking. So we need to prove not just that the wetlands don't exist now, but that they've never existed. We need a paper trail. In 16 hours. In 16 hours, he agreed. They looked at each other across the table, and for a moment the enormity of what they were trying to do seemed impossible. Then Sophia's phone buzzed with an incoming email, and the moment broke. That's Sarah Chen from Mountain West Environmental, Sophia said, scanning the message. She's sending over the raw data from their original wetland delineation study. Should be... Her laptop chimed. There, that was fast. Ethan moved around the table to look at her screen as she opened the attachment. The file was massive, hundreds of pages of technical data, field notes, photographs, and survey results. He started scrolling through it, looking for anything relevant. Wait, he said. Go back. Sophia scrolled up. What did you see? There. Ethan pointed at a section of field notes dated March 2024, right after snowmelt. The surveyor specifically notes the absence of standing water or wetland vegetation in the northeast corner. And look, he scrolled down further. They came back in May and June to check again. Still nothing. No seasonal flooding, no wetland indicators. That's good, right? It's a start. Ethan grabbed his notebook, jotting down notes. But Victor's going to argue that your environmental consultant was biased because you hired them. We need independent verification. From where? Historical records. If that site used to be a manufacturing plant, there would have been regulatory oversight, environmental inspections, maybe aerial surveys. We need to find documentation showing what that property looked like before your company bought it. Sophia was already typing. The city planning department might have old site plans on file. Try the EPA, too, and the U.S. Geological Survey. They maintain historical aerial photography and topographic maps. Ethan moved back to his side of the table, pulling up another database. I'll check the water management district. If there was ever a wetland on that property, there would be records of water rights or flood zone designations. They worked in focused silence for the next 2 hours, the only sounds the clicking of keyboards and the occasional rustle of paper. Outside the windows, the sun climbed higher, and the city woke up around them. Other employees started arriving, but no one disturbed them. Ethan had a feeling Sophia had sent out a company-wide email telling everyone to stay away from the 24th floor. At 10:30, Ethan found something. Sophia. She looked up from her laptop, and he saw the exhaustion in her face. Please tell me it's good news. I think so. He turned his laptop around to show her a scanned document from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. This is an environmental assessment from 1995, when the manufacturing plant was still operational. It includes a detailed site survey that specifically identifies all wetlands and water features within a 1-mile radius. And the northeast corner of the property isn't listed. According to this survey, the closest wetland was half a mile away, and it was drained in 1998 to make room for a housing development. Sophia's eyes widened. That's it. That's proof. It's strong evidence, Ethan cautioned. But Victor's going to try to argue that wetlands can develop over time. That just because there wasn't a wetland in 1995 doesn't mean one couldn't have formed later. Can that happen? Technically, yes, but it would require significant changes in hydrology, changes in water flow, elevation, drainage patterns. We'd see evidence of it in recent surveys, which we don't have. Which we don't have, Ethan confirmed. So we need to prove that the hydrology of the site hasn't changed. And for that, he pulled up another database. We need historical flood maps. Sophia came around the table to stand beside him, looking at his screen. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made his chest feel tight. He forced himself to focus on the data in front of him. FEMA maintains flood zone maps going back decades, he explained, pulling up a series of overlapping maps showing the property boundaries. If the northeast corner of the property was prone to seasonal flooding, it would be designated as a floodplain. But look, he zoomed in. It's never been classified as flood-prone. Not in 1985, not in 1995, not in 2005, and not in the most recent update from 2023. So there's no flooding. No flooding, Ethan confirmed, which means no seasonal wetland. Victor's entire claim is based on a lie. For the first time since he'd walked into her office that morning, Sophia smiled. It transformed her entire face, made her look younger and less breakable. We can prove it. We can prove it, Ethan agreed. But we're not done yet. We need to figure out why Victor chose this specific lie. Why wetlands? Why the northeast corner? Sophia's smile faded. What do you mean? Victor's not stupid. He could have filed a dozen different complaints. Traffic concerns, noise pollution, building height restrictions. Why pick something so specific and so easy to disprove? Maybe he didn't know it would be easy to disprove. Maybe. Ethan frowned, something nagging at the back of his mind. Or maybe the wetlands claim is a distraction, something to keep us so busy defending against it that we miss whatever he's really planning. Sophia went very still. You think there's more? I think Victor Langford didn't become a billionaire by being careless. Ethan stood up, walking to the whiteboard where he'd created his timeline. He filed this complaint 24 hours before the hearing. That's not just strategic timing, that's surgical precision. He wanted us to focus all our energy on the wetlands issue. So what's the real issue? I don't know yet. Ethan stared at the timeline, at all the documents and dates and data points he'd mapped out. But I think we need to go back through everything Victor submitted, not just the wetlands claim, every single allegation in his complaint, every technical detail, every citation of regulation or law. We need to find what he's hiding. Sophia checked her watch. We have 12 hours until the hearing. Then we'd better get back to work. They ordered lunch from a Thai place down the street, pad Thai and spring rolls that they ate directly from the containers while surrounded by environmental reports. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd had a meal that didn't involve chicken nuggets and fruit snacks. Can I ask you something? Sophia said, breaking apart her chopsticks. Sure. Why are you still here? Ethan looked up from his pad Thai. What do you mean? You could have said no when I called you this morning. You could have told me this was above your pay grade or that you had family obligations or that 16 hours wasn't enough time. But you didn't. Why? He considered the question, twirling noodles around his chopsticks. Honestly, I don't know. I guess... He paused. I guess I'm tired of feeling like I'm just going through the motions, like I'm surviving but not actually living. This, he gestured at the chaos around them. This matters. What we're doing right now could save your company, could save jobs for everyone who works here. That feels important. Sophia watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone more... She searched for the word. Detached. You're a zoning compliance specialist. I thought you'd be all regulations and procedures and technical specifications. I am all those things. No, you're not. She shook her head. You care. About this company. About the people who work here. I can tell. Ethan felt uncomfortable under her gaze. You don't know me well enough to tell that. Maybe not, but I'm a pretty good judge of character. She took a bite of spring roll. Why zoning compliance? How does someone end up in that career? Long story. We have 12 hours. He smiled despite himself. It's not very interesting. Try me. Ethan set down his food, wiping his hands on a napkin. I used to be an architect, or I was studying to be one. That was the plan anyway. I was in graduate school, had this whole future mapped out. Then he stopped, the familiar weight settling in his chest. Life happened. I had to drop out. I needed a job that paid well and didn't require a graduate degree, and I knew zoning regulations from my architecture studies. So I became the thing I used to work around. You said life happened. What does that mean? Ethan hesitated. He didn't talk about Sarah, not with colleagues, not with anyone except Emma, and even then only when she brought it up first. My wife got sick, he said finally. Cancer. She died 3 years ago. Sophia's face went soft. I'm sorry. It's okay. The automatic response, even though it wasn't okay and probably never would be. You have a daughter, right? I saw her picture in your office once. Emma, she's 7. So you're raising her alone? Yeah. Ethan picked up his chopsticks again, needing something to do with his hands. It's fine. We manage. And that must be hard. Some days are harder than others. He forced a smile. But she's a good kid. Makes it easier. Sophia was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think Emma's lucky to have you. The words hit him harder than they should have. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Sophia's voice was firm. You're here right now, working through the night to save a company that's probably never going to properly appreciate what you're doing. You could be home with your daughter, but you're here because you care about doing the right thing. That says everything. Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. Didn't know how to explain that staying here felt selfish, not noble. That he was here because for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered beyond just surviving. What about you? He asked, deflecting. How does someone end up running a billion-dollar development company at 30? Sophia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Inheritance. My father built this company from nothing. Spent 40 years making it one of the most respected development firms in the region. Then he had a heart attack during a board meeting, and suddenly it was mine. How long ago? 2 years. She pushed her food around with her chopsticks. Everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced, that I should sell the company or bring in an outside CEO. But I couldn't. This was my father's legacy. I couldn't just let it go. So you proved them wrong. I'm trying to. Sophia met his eyes. But some days I feel like I'm drowning, like I'm one mistake away from destroying everything he built. And Victor knows it. That's why he's doing this. He sees a weakness, and he's going for the kill. Ethan understood that feeling more than she knew, the constant fear of not being enough, of failing the people who depended on you. We're not going to let him win, he said. Sophia smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. No, we're not. At 4 in the afternoon, Ethan found the second piece of evidence that changed everything. He'd been going through Victor's complaint line by line, cross-referencing every citation and regulation mentioned. Most of it was standard stuff: environmental protection statutes, water quality standards, wetland conservation guidelines. But one citation stood out. Sophia, he said slowly, come look at this. She came over to his side of the table. What did you find? Victor cites a specific Colorado Department of Natural Resources regulation about seasonal wetland protection. The regulation number is DNR-WL-447. Ethan pulled up the state's regulatory database, except DNR-WL-447 doesn't exist. What do you mean? I mean the regulation he's citing was repealed in 2019. It's not enforceable anymore. He's using an outdated regulation to support his claim. Sophia leaned over his shoulder to look at the screen. Is that illegal? It's definitely misleading. And it suggests Victor didn't do his homework. Or, Ethan frowned, or he's counting on the city council not doing theirs. Most council members aren't going to verify every regulation cited in a complaint. They'll assume it's accurate. So we can call him out on it at the hearing. We can do better than that. Ethan was already pulling up another search. If Victor is citing repealed regulations, he might be making other technical errors. We need to check every single citation in his complaint, every regulation, every statute, every ordinance. If we can prove he's being deliberately misleading, we can discredit his entire complaint. Exactly. They spent the next 3 hours going through Victor's filing with a fine-toothed comb, checking every reference against current law. By 7 o'clock, they'd found 4 more citations that were either outdated, misapplied, or taken out of context. He's not just lying about the wetlands, Sophia said, staring at the list they'd compiled. He's built his entire case on bad information, which means when we take it apart at the hearing, the whole thing collapses. Ethan leaned back in his chair, feeling the exhaustion starting to catch up with him. We need to organize this into a clear, logical presentation. Something the council can follow easily. I'll work on the structure. Sophia grabbed a fresh legal pad. You focus on making sure our evidence is airtight. We can't afford any gaps. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Emma had dinner and finished her homework. She's asking when you'll be home. Guilt twisted in his stomach. He checked the time. 7:15. He'd been gone for over 13 hours. He typed back, working late on an emergency project. Can you stay until 9? The response came immediately. Of course, take your time. He sent a second text. Can you tell Emma I love her and I'll see her in the morning? Already did. She says she loves you too and to drink water so you don't get dehydrated. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Everything okay? Sophia asked. Yeah, just checking in with my daughter. He set his phone down. She's worried I'm not drinking enough water. Smart kid. Sophia stood up, walking to the small refrigerator in the corner of the conference room. She pulled out 2 bottles of water and tossed one to him. Listen to your daughter. They worked through the evening, taking breaks only when absolutely necessary. At some point, Marcus from legal stopped by with additional research on environmental case law. At another point, someone from facilities brought fresh coffee and sandwiches. The sun set, and the windows turned into mirrors reflecting the fluorescent-lit chaos of the conference room. At 11:30, Ethan's vision started to blur. He'd been staring at engineering diagrams for too long, and the numbers were starting to swim together on the page. Take a break, Sophia said. I'm fine. Ethan, you're falling asleep sitting up. Take a break. He wanted to argue, but she was right. He pushed back from the table and stood up, his back protesting the hours of sitting. 5 minutes. He walked to the windows, looking out at Denver spread below them. The city was beautiful at night, all lights and shadows and possibility. Somewhere down there, Emma was asleep in her bed. Mrs. Chen was probably watching television in their living room. Life was continuing normally while he stood here, 24 floors up, trying to save a company he'd only worked for 9 months. Do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you'd made different choices? Sophia's voice came from behind him. He turned. She'd come to stand beside him at the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. All the time, he admitted. What would you have chosen? If you could go back? Ethan thought about that, about Sarah, about Emma, about the architecture degree he'd never finished and the life he'd planned that had never happened. I don't know. I can't imagine my life without Emma, but I also can't imagine... He stopped. Can't imagine what? Being happy again. Really happy. Not just going through the motions. I can't imagine what that would feel like anymore. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. I understand that, she said finally. After my father died, everyone kept telling me it would get better, that the grief would fade. But it didn't fade. It just changed shape. Became something I carried around instead of something that carried me. Yeah, Ethan said softly. Exactly. They stood there together, 2 people who understood what it meant to survive something that changed the shape of your life. Outside, the city sparkled. Inside, the silence felt almost comfortable. Then Sophia's phone rang, shattering the moment. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and went very pale. It's Victor. Don't answer it. I have to. She swiped to accept the call, putting it on speaker. Victor, calling late. Victor Langford's voice came through the speaker, smooth and confident. Sophia, I wanted to give you a chance to withdraw your project before tomorrow's hearing. Save us all some time. I'm not withdrawing anything. Really? Even after you've seen my complaint? Especially after I've seen your complaint. It's full of lies. Victor laughed. Careful, Sophia. That's a serious accusation. So is filing a fraudulent environmental complaint. The laughter stopped. I don't know what you think you found, but I assure you every claim in my filing is accurate and supported by current regulations. Is that so? Sophia looked at Ethan, and he saw something fierce in her expression. Then you won't mind when I present evidence tomorrow showing that your seasonal wetland doesn't exist and never has, or when I point out that you're citing regulations that were repealed 5 years ago. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, carefully, you're bluffing. Try me. This is a mistake, Sophia. You're making an enemy you can't afford. No, Victor. You already did that when you decided to destroy my company with lies. See you tomorrow. She ended the call, and her hand was shaking. Ethan felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had been quiet for 3 years was suddenly awake and paying attention. He was looking at Sophia, really looking at her, and seeing not just his CEO, but a woman fighting for everything she had left. A woman who was terrified and exhausted and still refusing to back down. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said. Probably both. Sophia set her phone down on the window ledge. But I'm done being scared of him. We have the evidence, we have the truth, and tomorrow we're going to prove it. Yeah, Ethan said, and he found himself smiling. We are. They went back to work. By 2 a.m, they had everything organized. The evidence was compiled. The presentation was structured. The response to every single one of Victor's allegations was documented, sourced, and cross-referenced. Ethan sat back, looking at what they'd built, and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. We're ready, Sophia said, and she sounded almost surprised. We're ready, Ethan agreed. Sophia looked at him across the table, and in her eyes, he saw the same exhaustion and fear and determination he felt in his own chest. Thank you, she said quietly. For staying, for caring, for not giving up. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. She stood up, gathering her files. Go home, Ethan. Get a few hours of sleep. The hearing starts at 9. What about you? I'll sleep here. I have a couch in my office. That's not a good idea. It's the only idea I have. She smiled, but it looked fragile. I'm too wired to sleep anyway. I'll just lie here and run through the presentation in my head. Ethan understood that feeling. The adrenaline and anxiety mixing together until sleep felt impossible. At least try, he said. We both need to be sharp tomorrow. I will, I promise. He didn't believe her, but he was too tired to argue. He grabbed his backpack, took one last look at the conference room that had become their war room, and headed for the elevator. Outside, the night air was cool against his face. He stood in the parking lot for a moment, looking up at the building. The lights on the 24th floor were still on. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophia. Thank you for everything. He typed back, See you at 9. We're going to win this. The response came immediately. I believe you. Ethan drove home through empty streets, thinking about wetlands that didn't exist and regulations that had been repealed and a billionaire who thought he could destroy a company with lies. He thought about Emma, asleep in her bed. About Sophia, alone in her office, too scared to rest. He thought about the hearing that would start in 7 hours. And for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Ethan walked through his front door at 3:15 in the morning to find Mrs. Chen asleep on the couch, the television playing some late-night infomercial about kitchen gadgets. He felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over him as he gently touched her shoulder. She startled awake, blinking at him in the blue glow of the TV. Oh, Ethan, you're home. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to keep you this late. Don't be silly. Mrs. Chen stood up, gathering her knitting bag and purse. Emma's fine. She went to bed at 8:30 without any fuss. Such a good girl. You're a lifesaver. You look exhausted. Mrs. Chen studied his face with the frank assessment of someone who'd known him long enough to speak her mind. When's the last time you slept? I'll sleep after the hearing. That's not healthy. I know. Ethan pulled out his wallet, but Mrs. Chen waved him off. Pay me tomorrow. Go check on your daughter and get some rest. After she left, Ethan stood in his living room for a moment, looking at the normal, ordinary mess of his life. Emma's backpack by the door, her art project drying on the kitchen table, a half-finished puzzle spread across the coffee table, evidence of a regular Wednesday in a regular house, completely disconnected from the corporate warfare waiting for him in a few hours. He walked quietly down the hallway to Emma's room. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging off the side, mouth slightly open. Her nightlight cast stars across the ceiling. She looked so small, so peaceful. Ethan sat carefully on the edge of her bed, brushing hair back from her forehead. Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Dad? Hey, sweetheart, go back to sleep. You're home. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. What time is it? Late. I'm sorry I missed bedtime. Emma was quiet for a moment, studying him with that unnerving perceptiveness. You look different. Different how? I don't know. Less tired, maybe. Or like She yawned. Like you're thinking about something important. Ethan smiled despite himself. I am thinking about something important. A very big meeting I have in the morning. Is that why you stayed at work so long? Yeah, I was helping someone who needed it. Emma leaned against his shoulder, still half asleep. Mom used to say that helping people was the most important thing, even when it's hard. The words hit him square in the chest. Sarah had said that over and over. Even when she was sick, even when she could barely get out of bed, she'd insisted that caring about other people mattered more than anything. She was right, Ethan said quietly. Are you scared about your meeting? He considered lying, giving her the reassuring dad answer, but Emma deserved better than that. A little bit, yeah. That's okay. Mom said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing anyway. Ethan pulled her into a hug, this impossibly wise 7-year-old who somehow knew exactly what he needed to hear. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're too busy being tired. He laughed, the sound surprising him. Fair point. Will you win at your meeting? I'm going to try my hardest. Then you'll win. Emma said it with the absolute certainty of childhood, as if trying hard was all it took. Because you're the best at your job. How do you know that? Because you care about it. You wouldn't work so hard if you didn't care. She yawned again, her eyes already closing. That's what makes people good at things. Caring. Ethan helped her lie back down, pulling the blanket up to her chin. I love you, Emma. Love you too, Dad. She was already drifting off. Don't forget to set your alarm. I won't. He stood in her doorway for another minute, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of everything he was carrying. Then he went to his own room, set 3 different alarms, and collapsed into bed without bothering to change out of his clothes. Sleep came fast and hard, pulling him under before he could think about wetlands or regulations or the way Sophia had looked standing at that window, backlit by the city. The first alarm went off at 6:30. Ethan silenced it and immediately checked his phone. 2 texts from Sophia, sent at 4 in the morning. The first, can't sleep, keep running through the presentation. What if we miss something? The second, sent 20 minutes later. Sorry, ignore that, we're ready. See you at 8:30. He typed back, we didn't miss anything. Get some coffee and breathe. It's going to be fine. Her response came immediately, like she'd been waiting for him to wake up. I'm holding you to that. Ethan showered, shaved, and put on his best suit, a charcoal gray one he'd bought for Sarah's funeral and hadn't worn since. It still fit, barely. He'd lost weight over the past 3 years, the kind of weight loss that came from forgetting to eat and running on adrenaline. In the kitchen, he found Emma already awake, eating cereal at the table while Mrs. Chen made coffee. You came back early, Ethan said to Mrs. Chen. I figured you'd need help getting out the door on time. She handed him a travel mug. Drink this and eat something. You look like you're about to fall over. I don't have time. Make time. You're no good to anyone if you pass out in the middle of your important meeting. Emma looked up from her cereal. You should listen to Mrs. Chen, Dad. She's bossy, but she's usually right. Mrs. Chen laughed. Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan grabbed a protein bar and his briefcase, kissing Emma on the top of her head. Be good at school today. I'm always good at school. True. He crouched down to her level. I might be home late again tonight, but tomorrow, I promise, we'll do something fun. Just you and me. Like what? Whatever you want. Emma considered this seriously. Can we go to the art museum? They have a new exhibit on Impressionism. Since when do you know what Impressionism is? Mrs. Patterson taught us. It's paintings that look kind of blurry, but also beautiful, like dreams. Ethan felt his throat tighten. The art museum sounds perfect. The drive downtown took longer than usual. Morning traffic crawled through the city, giving Ethan too much time to think. His phone rang as he sat at a red light on Spear Boulevard. Marcus from Legal. You ready for this? Marcus asked without preamble. As ready as I'm going to be. Sophia sent me the evidence package you two compiled. It's solid work, Ethan. Really solid. Victor's not going to know what hit him. Assuming the council actually listens to us, they'll listen. We've got facts on our side. That counts for something. Marcus paused. How's Sophia holding up? Honestly, I'm not sure. She's trying to act confident, but I think she's terrified. Can't blame her. This is her whole company on the line. Another pause. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. I've worked for Bennett Development for 8 years. I've seen Sophia grow up in this business, watched her take over after her father died. She's tough, but she's also human. She needs people she can trust right now, people who won't bail when things get hard. I'm not going anywhere. Good, because I think she's starting to count on you. And Sophia doesn't count on people easily. The light turned green. Ethan accelerated, thinking about what Marcus had said, about trust and counting on people and the strange intimacy of spending 16 hours together building a defense against someone trying to destroy everything you'd built. Marcus, can I ask you something? Shoot. What's Victor's endgame here? I mean, even if he'd succeeded in killing the Riverside project, what does he gain? He's not developing that land. He doesn't have any competing projects in that area. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You're asking the right question. I've been wondering the same thing. My guess? It's not about the land. It's about breaking Sophia. Victor and her father were rivals for decades. When David Bennett died and Sophia took over, Victor saw an opportunity. If he can prove she's not capable of running the company, that she makes mistakes, he can swoop in and buy Bennett Development for cheap. Exactly. This isn't about one project. It's about destroying her credibility so he can take over everything her father built. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's not going to happen. No, Marcus agreed. It's not. See you at City Hall. Ethan parked in the garage beneath the municipal building at 8:45. The city council chambers were on the 3rd floor, a large room with wood paneling and rows of seats facing a raised platform where the council members sat. He'd been here before for other hearings, but never for something this high stakes. Sophia was already there, standing near the front of the room with Marcus and 2 other lawyers from the firm. She'd changed into a navy blue suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked every inch the powerful CEO, but when she saw Ethan, relief flashed across her face. You made it, she said. Did you think I wouldn't? I don't know. After last night, I wasn't sure if I dreamed the whole thing. She lowered her voice. Did we really build a case in 16 hours? We really did. And it's good? It's solid? It's bulletproof. Sophia closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, some of the tension had left her shoulders. Okay, we can do this. We can do this, Ethan confirmed. Marcus joined them, carrying a box of files. Victor just arrived. He's got 3 lawyers with him, and some guy in an expensive suit who I think is a lobbyist. Of course he does. Sophia glanced toward the back of the room where Victor Langford stood surrounded by his legal team. He was in his mid-50s, silver-haired and confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month. When he noticed Sophia looking, he smiled and raised his hand in a mocking wave. Arrogant bastard, Marcus muttered. Let him be arrogant, Sophia said. It'll make it more satisfying when we take him apart. The council members began filing in at exactly 9 o'clock. There were 7 of them, a mix of longtime politicians and newer members elected on reform platforms. The council president, a woman named Catherine Rodriguez, took her seat at the center of the platform and banged her gavel. This meeting of the Denver City Council Planning Commission is now in session. We're here to consider final approval for the Riverside Development Project proposed by Bennett Development Corporation. Before we proceed with the standard approval process, we have a formal objection filed by Mr. Victor Langford of Langford Industries. Mr. Langford, you have 15 minutes to present your concerns. Victor stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He moved to the podium with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Thank you, Council President Rodriguez. Members of the Council, I'm here today because I have serious concerns about the environmental impact of the proposed Riverside project. He clicked a remote, and a presentation appeared on the large screen behind him. The first slide showed an aerial photograph of the development site. This property, Victor continued, contains a seasonal wetland in its northeast corner. This wetland provides critical habitat for migratory birds and serves as a natural flood control mechanism during spring runoff. Bennett Development has failed to disclose this wetland in their environmental impact reports, which constitutes a violation of state and federal environmental protection laws. Ethan felt Sophia tense beside him. On the screen, Victor had superimposed a blue overlay on the northeast corner of the property, making it look like there was standing water where Ethan knew there was only empty land. According to Colorado Department of Natural Resources Regulation DNR-WL-447, Victor said, any development project that disturbs seasonal wetlands must undergo additional environmental review and obtain special permits. Bennett Development has done neither. They've either deliberately concealed the existence of this wetland or they've failed to conduct adequate environmental due diligence. Either way, this project should not move forward until these violations are addressed. He spoke for another 10 minutes, laying out a case that sounded convincing if you didn't know the facts. He cited environmental studies, water quality concerns, and the potential impact on wildlife populations. He showed photographs that looked damning until you realized they weren't actually of the riverside property at all. When he finished, he looked directly at Sophia. I take no pleasure in raising these concerns, but we have a responsibility to protect our environment, even when it's inconvenient for developers who cut corners. The implication was clear. He was painting Sophia as careless at best, dishonest at worst. Council President Rodriguez thanked Victor and turned to Sophia. Ms. Bennett, you have 15 minutes to respond. Sophia stood, and Ethan saw her hand shaking slightly as she gathered her notes. She walked to the podium, and for a moment she just stood there, looking at the council members. Then she spoke, and her voice was steady. Everything Mr. Langford just told you is a lie. A murmur ran through the room. Victor's smile faltered slightly. I don't make that accusation lightly, Sophia continued, but I'm going to prove it to you. With facts, with evidence, and with the help of the person who knows this project better than anyone else in this room. She looked at Ethan. Ethan Cole is our senior zoning compliance specialist. He spent the last 6 months ensuring that every single aspect of the Riverside project complies with local, state, and federal regulations. Last night, when we received Mr. Langford's objection, Mr. Cole and I spent 16 hours reviewing every claim he made. What we found was a pattern of deliberate misrepresentation designed to sabotage this project. Ethan, would you walk the council through what we discovered? Ethan's heart was pounding as he stood up. Public speaking had never been his strength. He preferred working behind the scenes, dealing with documents and data instead of people. But as he walked to the podium and looked at the council members, he thought about Emma telling him that being brave meant doing the thing anyway. Thank you, Ms. Bennett. He pulled up his own presentation, replacing Victor's fabricated wetland map with a genuine satellite image of the property. Let's start with Mr. Langford's central claim, that there's a seasonal wetland in the northeast corner of this property. Here's what the property actually looks like. The image showed exactly what Ethan had seen in person. A flat, empty lot with no water, no wetland vegetation, no indication of flooding. This photograph was taken 3 weeks ago during the peak of spring runoff, when Mr. Langford claims the wetland would be most visible. As you can see, there's no wetland, but maybe the wetland appeared in previous years. Let's check. He clicked through a series of satellite images dating back 15 years. No wetland in 2024, no wetland in 2023, no wetland in 2020, no wetland in 2015. In fact, there's never been a wetland on this property, which makes sense when you look at the historical records. Next slide. The 1995 environmental assessment he'd found. This is a comprehensive environmental survey conducted when the site was still an industrial facility. It identifies every wetland and water feature within a 1-mile radius. The northeast corner of the property isn't listed because it's never been prone to flooding or water accumulation. He could see some of the council members leaning forward, paying attention now. But let's say Mr. Langford is right, Ethan continued. Let's say a wetland somehow developed after 1995. We'd see evidence of it in recent surveys, right? Except we don't. He pulled up the field notes from the environmental consultant. Mountain West Environmental conducted 3 separate wetland surveys of this property in 2024. They specifically noted the absence of standing water, wetland vegetation, and hydric soils in the northeast corner. They returned during different seasons to verify. No wetland. Furthermore, Ethan clicked to the FEMA flood maps. This property has never been designated as a floodplain, Not in the past 40 years. The water table in this area is too deep, and the soil composition doesn't support wetland formation. Mr. Langford's seasonal wetland doesn't just fail to exist now. It's geologically impossible for it to exist. He paused, letting that sink in. So why would Mr. Langford make this claim? Let's look at the regulation he cited to support it. New slide, the text of DNR-WL-447. This is the Colorado Department of Natural Resources regulation that Mr. Langford says we violated, except there's a problem. This regulation was repealed in 2019. It's not enforceable. It hasn't been enforceable for 6 years. The murmur in the room got louder. Ethan saw Victor lean over to whisper something to one of his lawyers, who started frantically typing on a laptop. And that's not the only outdated regulation Mr. Langford cited. Ethan pulled up the list he and Sophia had compiled. His complaint references 4 other regulations that have been repealed, amended, or superseded by newer statutes. He's either incompetent, which I doubt, or he's deliberately using outdated information, banking on the assumption that no one would check his work. Council President Rodriguez was frowning now, looking at Victor with open skepticism. But here's what really concerns me, Ethan said, and he felt the anger that had been building all night crystallize into something cold and sharp. Mr. Langford didn't just make mistakes. He fabricated evidence. He clicked to the photographs Victor had shown of supposed wetlands. These images Mr. Langford presented as evidence of the wetland on our property, they're not from our property at all. I ran them through a reverse image search. They're stock photographs from a wetland mitigation project in Fort Collins. They have nothing to do with the Riverside site. The room erupted. Council members were talking over each other. Victor was on his feet, his face red. His lawyers were pulling at his sleeve, trying to get him to sit down. That's a serious accusation, Council President Rodriguez said, her voice cutting through the noise. Mr. Langford, do you have a response? Victor stepped back to the podium, and Ethan could see the calculation behind his eyes. The photographs were included for illustrative purposes only, to show what a seasonal wetland looks like. They were never meant to represent the actual Riverside property. You showed them while claiming they were evidence of wetlands on our property, Sophia said, standing up. That's not illustration, that's fraud. I object to that characterization. Then explain the repealed regulations, Ethan said, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. Explain why you're citing laws that haven't been enforceable for years. Explain why there's no evidence, zero evidence of the wetland you claim exists. Victor's jaw clenched. My environmental consultants conducted their own survey. Then where is it? Sophia demanded. You filed a formal complaint without including any supporting documentation from these consultants. No field notes, no soil samples, no photographs from the actual property. Nothing, because there's nothing to find. We have a right to additional time to compile. You've had months to compile evidence, Marcus cut in. This property has been under review for over a year. You waited until the day before final approval to file your objection. That's not due diligence. That's sabotage. Council President Rodriguez banged her gavel. Everyone calm down. Mr. Langford, I'm going to ask you directly. Do you have any actual evidence of wetlands on the Riverside property? Physical evidence from the site itself? Victor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The evidence speaks for itself. No, it doesn't, Rodriguez said flatly, because according to Mr. Cole's presentation, the evidence shows there are no wetlands. I'm asking if you have evidence to the contrary. The silence stretched out. Ethan watched Victor's face cycle through emotions, anger, calculation, and finally something that looked like defeat. We would need additional time to gather. That's a no. Rodriguez looked at the other council members. Does anyone else have questions for either party? One of the newer council members, a young man named James Park, raised his hand. I have a question for Mr. Cole. You've proven that the wetland doesn't exist. But what about Mr. Langford's broader point about environmental due diligence? How can we be confident that Bennett Development hasn't overlooked other environmental issues? It was a fair question, and Ethan had an answer ready. We conducted environmental assessments from 3 independent firms over the course of 18 months. All of them cleared the property. We tested for soil contamination, water quality, air quality, and habitat impact. Every test came back clean. Furthermore, we've designed the Riverside project to actually improve environmental conditions in the area. We're creating public parks, installing stormwater management systems, and including green building features that exceed city requirements. This isn't just a development, it's environmental remediation. Park nodded slowly. Thank you. That's helpful. Another council member spoke up. Ms. Bennett, do you have any idea why Mr. Langford would go to such lengths to stop your project? Sophia looked directly at Victor. You'd have to ask him, but I suspect it has less to do with environmental concerns and more to do with eliminating competition. That's absurd, Victor snapped. I have no competing projects in that area. No, you don't, Sophia agreed. But you've been trying to acquire my company for 2 years. You made offers to our board after my father died. You approached our investors trying to convince them I was too inexperienced to run Bennett Development. When none of that worked, you decided to destroy our credibility instead. If you can prove I'm incompetent, that I make mistakes, that I cut environmental corners, then maybe you can buy my company for pennies on the dollar after this project fails. You have no proof of that. I have your phone call from last night, Sophia said coolly. The one where you told me I was making an enemy I couldn't afford and that I should withdraw the project. That's not environmental concern. That's a threat. Victor's face went pale. He clearly hadn't expected her to mention the phone call in a public hearing. Council President Rodriguez looked disgusted. I've heard enough. Does anyone else need more information before we vote? The council members looked at each other. One by one, they shook their heads. Then let's vote. All in favor of approving the Riverside Development Project as submitted by Bennett Development Corporation? 6 hands went up. Opposed? 1 hand, a council member who Ethan knew had received campaign contributions from Langford Industries. The motion passes. The Riverside Project is approved. Rodriguez banged her gavel. Mr. Langford, your objection is dismissed, and I'll be referring your complaint to the city attorney's office for review. If you filed fraudulent environmental claims, there will be consequences. The hearing was over, just like that. 16 hours of work, 6 months of preparation, 3 years of grief and survival, and trying to hold his life together, all of it led to this moment. Victory. Ethan turned to Sophia and found her staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Relief, yes. Gratitude, definitely. But something else, too. Something that made his chest feel tight and his heart beat faster. We won, she said, and her voice cracked on the words. We won, he confirmed. And then she was hugging him, right there in the middle of the city council chambers, in front of everyone. Her arms wrapped around his shoulders, and he could feel her shaking. He hugged her back, aware of Marcus grinning at them, aware of Victor storming out of the room with his lawyers trailing behind him, aware that this was probably completely inappropriate. He didn't care. Thank you, Sophia whispered. Thank you for believing me, for staying, for fighting. You fought too, Ethan said. You were incredible up there. She pulled back and he saw tears in her eyes. I was terrified. You didn't look terrified. That's because you made me brave. They stood there for a moment and Ethan felt something shift between them. Something that had been building all night in that conference room, over Thai food and environmental reports and shared exhaustion. Something dangerous and impossible and completely undeniable. Marcus cleared his throat loudly. Not to interrupt this moment, but we should probably get out of here before the reporters show up. This is going to be all over the news by this afternoon. Sophia stepped back, wiping her eyes. Right. Yes. We should go. They gathered their files and headed for the elevators. On the way down, Marcus kept grinning at Ethan like he knew a secret. Ethan ignored him. Outside, the morning sun was bright and warm. Spring in Denver, everything green and alive. Ethan checked his phone and saw 3 missed calls from the office and a text from Emma's school. His stomach dropped. The text was from Mrs. Patterson, Emma's teacher. Emma fell on the playground. She's okay, but has a small cut on her forehead. She's in the nurse's office. Can you call when you get this? I have to go, Ethan said abruptly. Emma's school called. She got hurt. Go, Sophia said immediately. Is she okay? I think so, but I need to... Go. Take the rest of the day. We'll handle everything here." Ethan was already running toward his car. He called the school as he drove, his hands shaking on the wheel. The nurse assured him Emma was fine, just a small cut that they'd already cleaned and bandaged. But he couldn't shake the guilt. He'd been so focused on the hearing, on saving Sophia's company, that he'd almost forgotten the only job that truly mattered. When he got to the school, Emma was sitting in the nurse's office with a small bandage on her forehead, looking more annoyed than hurt. "Dad, I'm fine," she said when she saw him. "It's just a tiny cut. Let me see." He crouched down, examining the bandage. The nurse was right. It was small, barely bleeding, but seeing it made his chest ache anyway. "What happened?" "I was racing Jacob at recess and I tripped. It's not a big deal." "It's a big deal to me." Emma rolled her eyes with all the exasperation a 7-year-old could muster. "You left your important meeting for this? You're more important than any meeting. Did you win?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah, we won." "See, I told you you would." Emma hopped down from the examination table. "Can I go back to class now? We're doing fractions and I don't want to miss it." The nurse signed her release form and Ethan walked Emma back to her classroom. In the hallway, she took his hand. "Dad? Yeah? You look different again. Like you did this morning. But more." "More what?" "More happy. Like actually happy. Not just pretending." She looked up at him, her brown eyes serious beneath the bandage. "Is it because you won your meeting?" Ethan thought about that, about standing in the city council chambers watching Sophia dismantle Victor's lies, about the hug afterward, the way she'd looked at him, about feeling, for the first time in 3 years, like he was part of something bigger than just surviving. "Yeah," he said. "I think it is." Emma squeezed his hand. "Good. You should win more meetings." After dropping Emma back at her classroom, Ethan sat in his car in the school parking lot for 10 minutes, staring at his phone. He had 17 unread emails, 6 voicemails, and a text from Marcus that just said, "Everyone here wants to buy you drinks. When are you coming back?" He didn't want to go back to the office. The adrenaline from the hearing had worn off, leaving him hollowed out and exhausted. His body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But more than that, he didn't want to face whatever happened next. Didn't want to deal with the inevitable congratulations and backslapping and questions about what he and Sophia had been doing alone in that conference room all night. Because the truth was, something had happened in that conference room, something he couldn't name and didn't know how to handle. He'd felt it when Sophia hugged him after the hearing, that spark of connection, that dangerous awareness of her as more than just his CEO, and he was pretty sure she'd felt it too. His phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. "Seriously, where are you?" Sophia keeps asking. Ethan closed his eyes, took a breath, and drove back downtown. The office was chaos when he walked in. Someone had hung a banner across the main workspace that said Riverside Approved in letters that looked like they'd been made by a kindergartner with a marker addiction. People were clustered in small groups, talking and laughing. A few of them cheered when they saw Ethan. "There he is!" someone shouted. "The giant killer!" Ethan felt his face go hot. "I didn't kill anyone." "You killed Victor Langford's credibility," a woman from accounting said, grinning. "Same thing." Marcus appeared at his elbow, steering him toward the elevators. "Come on. Sophia wants to see you." "Now?" 5 minutes ago. Marcus hit the button for the top floor. "Fair warning, she's been weird all morning. Happy, but also kind of freaked out. I think the reality of what almost happened is finally hitting her." The elevator doors closed and Ethan found himself alone with Marcus, who was studying him with an expression that made Ethan nervous. "What?" Ethan asked. "Nothing. Just trying to figure out when it happened." "When what happened?" "When you two stopped being CEO and employee and became something else." Ethan's stomach dropped. There's nothing." "Relax. I'm not HR." Marcus leaned against the elevator wall. "But I've worked here a long time, and I've never seen Sophia look at anyone the way she looked at you this morning. And I've definitely never seen her hug someone in the middle of a city council hearing." She was relieved. "We won. People hug when they're relieved." "Sure they do." Marcus didn't sound convinced. "Look, I'm going to give you some advice you didn't ask for. Sophia's been alone for a long time. After her father died, she threw herself into running this company because it was easier than dealing with grief. She doesn't let people in. She doesn't trust easily. But last night she trusted you, and that means something. The elevator dinged, 25th floor. I'm just her employee, Ethan said, but even to his own ears it sounded weak. Keep telling yourself that. Marcus stepped out of the elevator. Her office is straight ahead. Try not to look so terrified. Sophia's assistant wasn't at her desk, which meant Ethan had to knock directly on Sophia's door. For a second, he considered just turning around and leaving, going home, pretending the hearing had never happened and they were still just CEO and compliance specialist, nothing more. Come in, Sophia called. Ethan opened the door. She was standing at the windows again, the same position she'd been in when he'd first arrived yesterday morning, but everything else was different. The fear was gone. The exhaustion was still there. He could see it in the set of her shoulders, but it was mixed with something that looked like disbelief. We did it, she said without turning around. We did. I keep waiting for someone to call and tell me it was a mistake, that Victor found some loophole, that the approval doesn't count. She finally turned to face him. How long does it take before this feels real? I don't know. I'm still processing it myself. Sophia walked to her desk, picking up a framed photograph that Ethan had noticed yesterday, a younger version of Sophia standing next to an older man who had the same sharp eyes and determined jaw, her father, obviously. He would have been proud, she said quietly, of what we accomplished, of standing up to Victor and winning. You should be proud too. I am, but I'm also… She set the photograph down. I'm scared, Ethan. We saved the project, but now we actually have to build it. And if we fail, if anything goes wrong, then we'll deal with it, same way we dealt with Victor. You won't be there, though. This was a one-time thing. You'll go back to your normal job, and I'll go back to running the company, and last night will just be… She stopped, like she didn't know how to finish the sentence. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Just be what? I don't know. Sophia looked at him, and there was something raw in her expression. I've been thinking about it all morning, about what happened in that conference room. We spent 16 hours together, and by the end of it, I felt like I'd known you forever, like I could trust you with anything, and that terrifies me. Why? Because I don't trust people. I can't afford to. Everyone wants something. Investors want returns, employees want security, competitors want me to fail. But you… She shook her head. You didn't want anything from me. You just helped because it was the right thing to do. And I don't know what to do with that. Ethan took a step closer. You don't have to do anything with it. Don't I? Because I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me when we won, or the way it felt when I hugged you. And I know that's completely inappropriate because you work for me and I'm your boss, and there are about 17 different HR violations in what I'm saying right now. Sophia, but I need to say it anyway, because if I don't, I'm going to spend the next year wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to be honest. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. This was the moment where he should step back, make an excuse, remind her of all the reasons this was a terrible idea. He had a daughter to think about, a job to protect, a life that was already complicated enough without adding feelings for his CEO into the mix. Instead, he said, I felt it too. Sophia's breath caught. What? In the conference room, during the hearing, when you hugged me. I felt it too. The words came out rough, like they'd been pulled from somewhere deep. And I've been trying not to think about it because you're right. This is complicated and inappropriate and probably a really bad idea, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. They stood there, looking at each other across the expensive carpet of her office, and Ethan felt like he was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. So what do we do? Sophia asked. I don't know. That's not helpful. I'm aware. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I have to think about what's best for her. I understand that. And you're my boss. If this goes wrong, I could lose my job. I can't afford to lose my job. I wouldn't let that happen. You can't promise that. If something happened between us and it didn't work out, the whole company would know. There would be gossip, judgment. It could damage your credibility. I don't care about gossip. You should. You just spent 16 hours fighting to save this company. You can't risk it for... He gestured helplessly between them. For whatever this is? Sophia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. What if I want to risk it? Ethan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Sophia, I'm serious. What if I'm tired of being careful, of making every decision based on what's safe or appropriate or good for the company? She moved closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her blue eyes. My whole life, I've done what I was supposed to do. I went to the right schools, took over my father's company, made all the responsible choices, and I'm so lonely I can barely breathe sometimes. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because, Ethan's voice came out strangled, because I'm barely holding my own life together. I can't be what you need. What do you think I need? Someone who has it all figured out, someone successful and put together and emotionally available. I'm a widower with a kid and a mortgage and about 17 different kinds of baggage. You deserve better than that. Sophia reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool against his palm. Don't tell me what I deserve. I get to decide that. Ethan looked down at their joined hands, and something in his chest cracked open. He'd been so focused on surviving, on being enough for Emma, on keeping all the broken pieces of his life from falling apart. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen, to have someone look at him and choose him anyway, baggage and all. This is a bad idea, he said. Probably. It could blow up in our faces. Most things worth doing can. Emma has to come first, always, no matter what. I wouldn't expect anything else. Ethan met her eyes. I don't know how to do this. Since Sarah died, I haven't even thought about... We'll figure it out, Sophia said. Together. If you want to. Did he want to? That was the question, wasn't it? And the answer terrified him because yes, he did. He wanted to see where this thing between them could go. Wanted to know if the connection they'd built in that conference room could survive outside of crisis and adrenaline. Wanted to feel something other than numb survival for the first time in 3 years. But wanting something and being ready for it were two different things. I need time, he said finally, to think about this, to talk to Emma, to make sure I'm not just... He struggled to find the words. To make sure I'm doing this for the right reasons. Sophia's face fell slightly, but she nodded. Okay, I understand. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I need to be sure. How long do you need? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. I don't know. Is that okay? It has to be. Sophia let go of his hand and he immediately missed the warmth of her touch. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Someone knocked on the door, shattering the moment. Sophia's assistant poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but the investors are calling for an update on the hearing. Should I put them through? Give me 5 minutes, Sophia said. The assistant disappeared. Sophia turned back to Ethan, and the CEO mask was back in place, professional, controlled, untouchable. You should go. Get some rest. You've been up for over 30 hours. What about you? I'll be fine. I have about 6 months of work to catch up on now that we're actually building this thing. She managed a small smile. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. I meant what I said at the hearing. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. No, I really couldn't. She walked to her desk, picking up a file. Take the rest of the week off. You've earned it. Ethan wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at him like a physical weight. Okay, but I'm serious about needing time. I know, and I'm serious about waiting. He left before he could say something else, something that would make this even more complicated than it already was. In the elevator, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, trying to process what had just happened. Sophia Bennett, his CEO, the woman who ran a billion-dollar company, had basically just told him she had feelings for him. And instead of running away like a sensible person, he'd admitted he felt the same way. What the hell was he doing? Marcus was waiting for him when the elevator doors opened. Well, not now, Marcus. That bad? I don't know what it is, that's the problem. Ethan headed for his office, Marcus following. For what it's worth, I think you two would be good together. Ethan stopped walking. You don't even know what we talked about. I can guess? And before you spiral into worst-case scenarios, let me remind you that Bennett Development has 300 employees. Nobody's going to care if the CEO dates someone from the company as long as you're both adults and it's consensual. She's my boss. So transfer to a different department. Problem solved. It's not that simple. It actually is. You're just scared. Marcus's voice softened. Which is fair. You've been through hell, but Ethan, you can't live the rest of your life being afraid to take a chance. I have Emma to think about. Emma wants you to be happy. She told you that herself. Marcus crossed his arms. Look, I'm going to be blunt. Sophia's the best thing that could happen to you, and you're probably the best thing that could happen to her. You're both stubborn and workaholic and terrible at taking care of yourselves. But you balance each other out. Last night proved that. Last night was a crisis. That's different than real life. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you two handled that crisis like you'd been working together for years. That's not nothing. Ethan didn't have an answer for that. He grabbed his backpack from his office, said goodbye to Marcus, and drove home in a daze. Emma was already back from school when he arrived, sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen, working on homework. She looked up when he walked in, the small bandage still visible on her forehead. "You're home early?" she said. "My boss gave me the rest of the week off." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? Why?" "Because we won. The big project got approved." "I told you it would." Emma abandoned her homework to hug him. "Does this mean we can go to the art museum tomorrow?" "Absolutely." Mrs. Chen was watching him with that knowing look she got sometimes. "You look different, less tired." "I slept in my car for 20 minutes. Does that count?" "No, it's something else." She studied his face. "Something happened. Something good." Ethan thought about Sophia's hand in his, about the way she'd looked at him when she said she wanted to risk it. "Maybe. I'm not sure yet." "Well, whatever it is, it suits you." Mrs. Chen gathered her things. "I'll see you Monday. Get some actual rest this weekend." After she left, Ethan made dinner. Spaghetti with marinara sauce from a jar, garlic bread from the frozen section, a salad that was mostly iceberg lettuce. It wasn't fancy, but Emma loved it. They ate at the kitchen table, and she told him about her day, about fractions, and the book they were reading in class, and how Jacob had apologized for making her trip at recess. "He felt really bad," Emma said through a mouthful of spaghetti. "He even gave me his fruit snacks at lunch. That was nice of him." "I know. I told him it was okay. Accidents happen." She twirled more spaghetti on her fork. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "Like, really happy, not just pretend happy when you're around me." Ethan set down his fork. "Why are you asking?" "Because you look different today. Like something changed. And I want to know if it's a good change or a bad change." How did he answer that? How did he explain that something had changed, but he didn't know yet if it was good or bad or just terrifying? "I think it might be good," he said carefully, "but I'm not sure yet." "Does it have to do with your boss, the lady you were helping?" "How did you—" Ethan stopped. "What makes you think that?" Emma shrugged. "You talked about her different this morning, like she was important. Not just work important, actually important." Sometimes having a perceptive kid was deeply inconvenient. "Her name is Sophia," Ethan said. "And yes, she might be important, but it's complicated." "Why is it complicated?" "Because she's my boss, and because I haven't—" He paused, trying to find the right words. "I haven't cared about anyone like that since your mom died, and that's scary." Emma was quiet for a moment, pushing spaghetti around her plate. "Do you think Mom would be mad?" The question hit him like a punch to the chest. "What? No, why would you think that?" "Because you still love Mom, and if you like someone else, does that mean you don't love Mom anymore?" Ethan reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "Listen to me. I will always love your mom. Always. She was everything, and nothing that happens now will ever change that. But Emma, your mom wouldn't want me to be alone forever. She'd want me to be happy, to live my life, not just survive it." "How do you know?" "Because she told me. Near the end, when she knew she wasn't going to," his voice cracked. She made me promise that I wouldn't shut down, that I'd stay open to possibilities, that I'd let you see me actually living, not just going through the motions. Emma's eyes were bright with tears. She said that? She did, and I've been breaking that promise for 3 years because I was too scared to keep it. Are you still scared? Terrified, Ethan admitted, but maybe it's time to be brave anyway. Emma smiled through her tears. Like you were at your meeting today. Exactly like that. They finished dinner and Emma went to take a bath while Ethan cleaned up the kitchen. He was loading the dishwasher when his phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. I know you need time and I respect that, but I wanted you to know that the board met this afternoon. They voted to promote you to Executive Director of Development. It's a completely different chain of command. You'd report to the COO, not to me. So if the boss thing was the only issue, it's not an issue anymore. Ethan stared at the message. She'd solved the problem, just like that. Removed the biggest obstacle between them with a single board vote. He typed back, That's a big promotion. Are you sure I'm qualified? Her response came immediately. You just saved my company. I think you're qualified. What if this doesn't work out? Between us, then you'll still have the job. I promise. The promotion is because you earned it, not because of anything else. Ethan sat down at the kitchen table, his phone in his hand, and thought about what Emma had said, about being brave, about actually living instead of just surviving. He typed, Can I take you to dinner this weekend? Just us. No work, no crisis, just getting to know each other. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, yes, I'd like that. Saturday night, 7 p.m., perfect. Where? Ethan thought about that. He didn't know fancy restaurants. Didn't know where successful CEOs like to eat. But he knew a small Italian place in his neighborhood that made incredible food and didn't care if you showed up in jeans. I'll pick you up. Wear something comfortable. Mysterious. I like it. One more thing. Emma knows. About us, I mean. Sort of. I told her tonight. What did she say? She asked if her mom would be mad. I told her no. There was a longer pause this time. Then, I can't imagine how hard that conversation was. Thank you for being honest with her. She deserves honesty. Even when it's hard, so do you. So here's some honesty. I'm terrified too, but I haven't felt this alive in years. Ethan smiled at his phone like an idiot. Same. See you Saturday. Can't wait. He set his phone down and found Emma standing in the doorway, wrapped in a towel, her wet hair dripping on the floor. Who are you texting? She asked. Sophia. Are you smiling? Maybe. Emma grinned. You look happy. Actually happy. I think I might be, Ethan said, and realized it was true. The next few days passed in a strange blur. Ethan took Emma to the art museum like he'd promised, and they spent 3 hours wandering through the Impressionist exhibit. Emma loved the Monet paintings, the way the colors blurred together into something that looked almost like a dream. Ethan found himself thinking about Sophia more than the art, about the dinner they had planned, about what it would mean to actually try this. On Friday, he got a formal letter from HR about his promotion. Executive Director of Development, reporting to the COO. A 25% salary increase. His own office with 2 windows instead of 1. It was more than he'd ever imagined when he'd taken the compliance job 9 months ago. Marcus called to congratulate him. I told you it would work out. You also told me I was overthinking everything. That too. So, are you nervous about tomorrow? Is it that obvious? Only to everyone who's talked to you this week. Marcus laughed. Relax. It's just dinner. What's the worst that could happen? I could completely mess this up and lose the best thing that's happened to me in years. Or you could have a great time and start building something real. Stop catastrophizing. Ethan wanted to argue, but Marcus had a point. He'd spent 3 years catastrophizing, imagining all the ways things could go wrong. Maybe it was time to imagine how things could go right. Saturday morning, he took Emma to her art class, then spent 2 hours cleaning the house like Sophia might actually see it, even though they were just going to dinner. He tried on 4 different outfits before settling on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that Emma said made him look handsome, but not like you're trying too hard. You're really nervous, Emma observed, watching him check his reflection for the third time. I haven't done this in a long time. It's just dinner, Dad. You eat dinner every day. Not with someone I... He stopped. Someone you like, Emma finished. It's okay to say it. Someone I like, Ethan agreed. Emma came over and straightened his collar. You're going to be great. Just be yourself. That's who she likes anyway. When did you get so wise? I was born this way. You just didn't notice because you were busy being worried all the time. Ethan laughed and pulled her into a hug. I love you, you know that? I know. Now go pick up your girlfriend before you're late. She's not my girlfriend. Not yet, Emma said with a knowing smile. Mrs. Chen arrived at 6:30 to stay with Emma. Ethan gave her a list of emergency numbers she already had, reminded Emma to brush her teeth, and checked his wallet twice to make sure he had his credit card. You're stalling, Mrs. Chen said. I'm being thorough. You're terrified. It's sweet. Now go. Sophia lived in a high-rise condo downtown, the kind of building with a doorman and marble floors and an elevator that required a key card to access the residential floors. Ethan felt completely out of place as he gave his name to the doorman, who called up to confirm before directing him to the elevators. Sophia's apartment was on the 28th floor. Ethan's stomach did a nervous flip as he knocked on her door. She opened it, and for a second he forgot how to breathe. She was wearing jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. No makeup except for a touch of something that made her eyes brighter. She looked nothing like the polished EO from the office, and everything like someone he could fall for. Hi, she said, smiling. Hi, you look... Beautiful seemed inadequate. Really nice. You too. Come in for a second. I just need to grab my jacket. Her apartment was smaller than he'd expected. An open floor plan with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked expensive but not ostentatious, and almost no personal touches except for a few framed photographs on a bookshelf. Ethan recognized her father in several of them. Your place is nice, he said. It's too big for one person. I keep meaning to downsize, but I never have time to look. Sophia grabbed a leather jacket from the coat closet. Where are we going? It's a surprise. I hate surprises. No, you don't. You're just used to being in control. Sophia laughed. Fair point. Okay, surprise me. The restaurant was called Nonna's, a tiny Italian place tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store in Ethan's neighborhood. It didn't look like much from the outside, but inside it was warm and loud and smelled like garlic and fresh bread. The owner, an elderly woman named Rosa, greeted Ethan like family. Ethan, it's been too long. And who is this beautiful lady? Rosa, this is Sophia. Sophia, Rosa makes the best lasagna in Colorado. The best lasagna anywhere, Rosa corrected. Come, come, I have your table ready. She led them to a small table in the corner, away from the noise of the main dining room. As they sat down, Sophia looked around with genuine delight. This place is perfect, she said. It's not fancy. I don't want fancy. I spend half my life at fancy restaurants making deals and schmoozing investors. This is... She smiled. This is real. Rosa brought them wine without asking what they wanted, then disappeared into the kitchen. Ethan and Sophia sat across from each other, and for a moment neither of them knew what to say. So, Sophia said finally, this is weird, right? We spent 16 hours together in a conference room, but now I feel like I don't know how to talk to you. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe we should start over. Pretend we just met. She held out her hand across the table. Hi, I'm Sophia. I run a development company and I'm terrible at cooking. Ethan shook her hand, playing along. I'm Ethan. I'm a single dad and I'm terrible at remembering to take my car in for oil changes. What do you do for fun? Honestly, I don't remember. It's been a while since I had time for fun. Same. Sophia leaned back in her chair. Okay, real question. What's the one thing you miss most from before... She paused. Before your wife died, what did you used to do that you don't do anymore? It was a gutsy question, and Ethan appreciated her for asking it directly instead of dancing around the subject. Hiking. Sarah and I used to go hiking every weekend after she got sick, and then after I stopped. It felt wrong to enjoy it without her. Have you thought about starting again? Sometimes. Emma keeps asking to go to Rocky Mountain National Park, but I keep making excuses. Why? Because I'm afraid it'll hurt too much, remembering all the times Sarah and I hiked those same trails. Ethan picked up his wine glass, swirling the liquid. What about you? What did you stop doing after your father died? Painting. I used to paint in my spare time, terrible abstract stuff that no one would ever want to look at, but I loved it. After Dad died, I threw myself into work and I haven't picked up a brush since. Why not? Same reason as you, probably. It reminds me of a version of myself that doesn't exist anymore. They looked at each other, and Ethan felt something shift between them. A recognition. They were both people who'd survived loss by shutting parts of themselves down, and maybe, just maybe, they could help each other find those parts again. Rosa brought their food, lasagna for both of them, a Caesar salad to share, more bread than two people could possibly eat. The conversation flowed easier after that. They talked about Emma and her obsession with Impressionist paintings, about the Riverside Project and the actual work of building it, about the weird things they'd learned working in development, obscure zoning regulations and the politics of city planning. Did you always want to do this? Sophia asked. Development work? No, I wanted to be an architect. That was the plan anyway. Ethan stabbed at his lasagna. I was in graduate school when Sarah got diagnosed. I dropped out to take care of her and Emma. After she died, I needed a job fast, and compliance work paid well. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I could do. Do you regret it? I used to. Now I'm not sure. If I'd become an architect, I wouldn't have been at Bennett Development. Wouldn't have been in that conference room with you. He met her eyes. So maybe things worked out the way they were supposed to. Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. I'm glad you were there, in that conference room. Not just because you saved my company, but because... She paused. Because I needed someone to remind me that I wasn't alone. You're not alone, Ethan said. I know that now. They finished dinner and Rosa refused to let them pay. You bring this beautiful lady back, she said to Ethan, and next time I make you my special tiramisu. Outside, the night air was cool and clear. The neighborhood was quiet, families settling in for the evening, porch lights flickering on. Sophia stood next to Ethan on the sidewalk, and he could feel the warmth of her shoulder against his. Thank you for tonight, she said, for bringing me here, for being honest with me. Thank you for waiting, for giving me time to figure this out. Have you? Figured it out? Ethan turned to face her. In the glow of the streetlights, she looked younger, less guarded. I think so. I'm still terrified, and I still don't know if I'm ready, but I know I want to try. Sophia smiled and it transformed her whole face. That's good enough for me. Yeah? Yeah. She stepped closer and Ethan's heart started pounding. Can I kiss you? He answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was soft and careful, both of them testing the waters. But then Sophia's hands were in his hair and Ethan was pulling her closer, and careful turned into something else entirely. Something that felt like coming alive after being numb for too long. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. That was, I know, Sophia said. Are we really doing this? I think we are. Ethan laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. Emma's going to be insufferable. She's been telling me to look happier. Smart kid, you should listen to her more often. She also said you were my girlfriend. Is that what I am? Ethan pulled back to look at her. Do you want to be? Sophia pretended to think about it. I suppose I could make time in my schedule. Such a romantic. Hey, I run a billion-dollar company. Romance isn't really my strong suit. I'll keep that in mind. They stood there on the sidewalk, holding hands like teenagers, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging kind that fades as soon as you examine it too closely. Real hope. The kind that said maybe, just maybe, he could build something new without losing what he'd had before. I should get you home, he said reluctantly. Emma's probably still awake, waiting to interrogate me about how tonight went. I'd like to meet her. Emma. Someday, when you're ready. She'd like that too. Fair warning, she'll ask you about a million questions about art and Impressionism and whether you think Monet was better than Renoir. I can handle that. I minored in art history. Of course you did. Sophia kissed him again, quick and sweet. Call me tomorrow? I'll call you tomorrow. He drove her home, walked her up to her apartment, and kissed her one more time at her door before forcing himself to leave. On the drive back to his own house, he couldn't stop smiling. Emma was, predictably, still awake when he got home. She was sitting on the couch with Mrs. Chen, but she jumped up when she heard him come in. How was it? It was good, really good. Did you kiss her? Emma, you totally did. You have that look. Mrs. Chen laughed. I think that's my cue to leave. Have a good night, you two. After she left, Emma dragged Ethan to the couch and made him tell her everything about dinner. He left out the kissing part, but he told her about the restaurant and the conversation and how Sophia used to paint. She sounds nice, Emma said. She is. Are you going to see her again? Yeah, I think I am. Emma leaned against his shoulder, yawning. Good. You deserve to be happy, Dad. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. So do you, kiddo. So do you. The weeks that followed felt like learning to walk after years of standing still. Ethan and Sophia fell into a rhythm that was careful at first, then gradually more comfortable. They had dinner twice a week, always at places that weren't expensive or showy. They talked on the phone every night after Emma went to bed, conversations that started about work and ended up ranging into everything else, childhood memories, embarrassing stories, fears they'd never told anyone. At the office, they were scrupulously professional. Ethan reported to the COO now, and he and Sophia kept their meetings strictly business. But sometimes, when no one was looking, she'd catch his eye across a conference room and smile, and he'd feel that spark all over again. Emma asked about Sophia constantly. When was she going to meet her? What did she look like? Did she like art? Could they all go to the museum together? Soon, Ethan kept saying, when the time is right. The truth was, he was terrified of that meeting. What if Emma didn't like Sophia? What if Sophia didn't know how to talk to a 7-year-old? What if introducing them made everything too real, too fast, and the whole thing fell apart? It was Marcus who finally called him out on it. They were having lunch in the break room, and Ethan had just deflected another question about when Sophia was going to meet Emma. You're stalling, Marcus said, stealing a French fry from Ethan's plate. I'm being careful. You're being scared. There's a difference. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Look, I get it. You want to protect Emma. That's what good parents do. But you can't keep your whole life in separate boxes forever. At some point, you have to trust that the people you care about can handle being in the same room together. What if it's a disaster? Then it's a disaster. But what if it's not? What if Emma and Sophia actually like each other? You'll never know if you don't try. Ethan knew Marcus was right, but knowing it and acting on it were different things. That night, after Emma finished her homework, he sat her down on the couch. I want to talk to you about something. Emma immediately looked worried. Did I do something wrong? No, nothing like that. I want to talk about Sophia, your girlfriend. Emma said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Yeah, my girlfriend. How would you feel about meeting her? Maybe we could all have dinner together this weekend. Emma's face lit up. Really? Can we go somewhere fun? Where do you want to go? That pizza place with the games, the one with the arcade. Ethan tried not to wince. The pizza place was loud and chaotic, full of screaming children and blinking lights and terrible pizza. It was exactly the kind of place where you couldn't have a meaningful conversation, which was probably why Emma had suggested it. She was nervous too. Are you sure? We could go somewhere nicer. I want pizza and games, and I want to see if Sophia is good at skee-ball. I don't think Sophia has ever played skee-ball in her life. Then it'll be funny. Emma grabbed his hand. Please, Dad? It'll be fun. How could he say no to that? Okay, pizza and games it is. When he texted Sophia that night to ask if she was free Saturday evening, her response was immediate. Yes, where? He sent her the address of the pizza place, then added, Fair warning, it's loud and the pizza is mediocre at best, but Emma really wants to show you the arcade. I can't wait. You might want to reserve judgment until you've actually experienced it. Ethan, I'm about to meet your daughter. I don't care if we're eating pizza in a tornado. I'm just happy you're ready. He stared at that message for a long time before typing back, I'm terrified. Me too. We'll be terrified together. Saturday arrived too fast and not fast enough. Emma changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on jeans and her favorite shirt, a purple one with a cartoon cat on it that she'd owned for 2 years and refused to get rid of even though it was getting too small. How do I look? She asked, spinning around. Beautiful. But you always look beautiful. I mean, do I look like someone a CEO would want to meet? Ethan crouched down to her level. Emma, Sophia already wants to meet you. You don't have to impress her. Just be yourself. What if she doesn't like me? That's literally impossible. You have to say that. You're my dad. I'm saying it because it's true. Ethan straightened her collar. Sophia's nervous too, you know. She's never dated someone with a kid before. She wants you to like her. Emma considered that. What if I don't? The question was asked so seriously that Ethan had to take a moment before answering. Then we'll figure it out. You're the most important person in my life, Emma. That doesn't change no matter what. But you really like her. I do. And she makes you happy. She does. Emma nodded slowly, working through something in her head. Okay, then I'll try to like her. For you. Don't try for me, just give her a chance, that's all I'm asking. They picked up Sophia at her apartment at 6. She came down to meet them in the lobby, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. When she saw Emma through the car window, her whole face softened. Emma, for her part, went completely quiet. Sophia opened the back door and slid into the seat next to Emma. Hi, you must be Emma. I'm Sophia. Emma stared at her for a long moment. Then, you're really pretty. Sophia laughed, surprised. Thank you, so are you. I love your shirt. It's my favorite. The cat's name is Princess Whiskers. That's an excellent name for a cat. Do you have any pets? No, I travel too much for work. But I always wanted a dog when I was your age. What kind? A golden retriever, the really fluffy kind. Emma's eyes lit up. Those are the best kind. Dad says we can't get a dog because our apartment is too small, but I keep asking anyway. Persistence is a valuable quality, Sophia said, shooting Ethan a smile. The conversation continued like that the whole drive to the pizza place. Easy and natural, Emma's initial shyness evaporating within minutes. By the time they parked, Emma was telling Sophia about her art class and the Impressionism exhibit they'd seen at the museum. I love Impressionism, Sophia said as they walked inside. Monet especially. Have you seen his water lilies series? Yes, they're so pretty. Like the water is alive. Exactly. When I was in college, I went to Paris and saw them in person at the Musée de l'Orangerie. They have these huge panels that curve around the room, and it feels like you're standing inside the painting. Emma grabbed Sophia's hand without thinking about it. Can you tell me about it? About Paris? Ethan watched them walk ahead of him into the restaurant, Emma looking up at Sophia with complete fascination, and felt something in his chest loosen. The fear he'd been carrying, that they wouldn't connect, that this would be awkward and forced, dissolved. They fit together naturally, like they'd known each other longer than 5 minutes. The pizza place was exactly as terrible as Ethan remembered. Screaming children, off-key electronic music from the arcade, servers who looked like they'd rather be literally anywhere else. But Emma was in heaven, dragging Sophia from game to game, showing her how to play skee-ball and air hockey and a racing game that had a steering wheel that barely worked. Sophia was terrible at all of it, but she laughed every time she lost, and Emma kept encouraging her to try again. When they finally sat down to eat pizza that tasted like cardboard with cheese on it, Emma was chattering nonstop. You're really bad at skee-ball, she informed Sophia. I know, I got 14 points total. That might be a record. It's okay, Dad's bad at it too. We can't all be good at everything. That's very wise, Sophia said seriously. Emma took a bite of pizza, considering. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you love my dad? Ethan choked on his soda. Emma's face was completely innocent, like she'd just asked about the weather. Sophia handled it better than he did. She set down her slice of pizza and looked at Emma directly. I care about him very much. We haven't been together very long, so I don't know if it's love yet, but I think it could be. That's a good answer, Emma said, nodding. Because if you just said yes right away, I wouldn't believe you. Love takes time. It does. How did you get so smart? I don't know. I just think about things a lot. Emma swirled her straw in her cup. My mom died when I was 4. I don't remember her very much. Just little things, like how she smelled and how she sang to me before bed. But Dad remembers everything. Sometimes I think he's sad because he remembers too much. Sophia's eyes were bright with emotion. I think your dad is one of the bravest people I've ever met, and I think your mom would be very proud of how he's taking care of you. Do you think she'd be mad that he's dating you? No. I think she'd want him to be happy, and I think she'd like that you're being so protective of him. Emma smiled, and just like that, the moment passed. She went back to eating her pizza, asking Sophia questions about Paris and painting and what it was like to run a company. Ethan sat there, mostly quiet, watching his daughter and his girlfriend bond over terrible pizza and loud arcade games, and felt something he thought was gone forever. Wholeness. Like all the broken pieces of his life were finally clicking back into place. After dinner, Emma wanted to play one more game, a crane machine filled with stuffed animals that was obviously rigged but that she was convinced she could beat. Watch, she told Sophia. I'm going to get that purple elephant. She didn't get the purple elephant, or anything else. After 4 tries, she was out of tokens and looking dejected. Sophia pulled out a $5 bill. Let me try. You won't get it either. It's impossible. Maybe, but it's worth a shot. Sophia fed the money into the machine, studied the crane for a long moment, then positioned it carefully over a small blue bear near the edge of the pile. The crane descended, grabbed the bear, lifted it up, and miracle of miracles actually dropped it into the prize chute. Emma's mouth fell open. How did you do that? Physics, Sophia said, handing her the bear. And a little bit of luck. Emma hugged the bear to her chest, beaming. This is the best night ever. On the drive home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, still clutching the blue bear. Sophia reached over and took Ethan's hand. That went well, she said quietly. She loves you, I can tell. I'm pretty crazy about her, too. Sophia looked back at Emma, sleeping peacefully. She's amazing, Ethan. You've done an incredible job with her. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's parenting. At least that's what my father used to say. You just do your best and hope it's enough. They dropped Sophia at her apartment, and Ethan walked her up to her door while Emma slept in the car downstairs. Thank you for tonight, he said, for being so good with her, for winning her that bear. It was easy. She's easy to love. Sophia wrapped her arms around his neck. So are you, for the record. I thought you said it was too soon to know if it was love. I said I didn't know. I didn't say I wasn't close. She kissed him, slow and deep. Take your daughter home. Call me tomorrow. I will. The next few months blurred together in the best possible way. The Riverside project broke ground in July, a massive ceremony with city officials and investors and news cameras. Sophia gave a speech about building the future of Denver, and Ethan stood in the crowd with Emma, watching her command the room with the same confidence she'd shown at the city council hearing. Construction moved forward in stages, demolition of the old structures, excavation, foundation work. Ethan was on site constantly, coordinating with contractors and engineers, solving problems as they arose. The job was demanding but satisfying in a way his old compliance work had never been. He was building something real, something that would last. His relationship with Sophia deepened in parallel. They spent most weekends together now, alternating between his apartment and hers. Emma was always included. They went to museums and parks, and once to a Rockies game where Emma declared baseball kind of boring, but the hot dogs are good. Sophia started keeping art supplies at Ethan's apartment so she could paint while Emma did her homework. Her work was abstract and messy and filled with color, and Emma declared it way better than anything in the museum. In September, Ethan took both of them hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park, the first time he'd been back since Sarah's death. He'd been dreading it, expecting the memories to overwhelm him, but instead he found himself making new ones. Emma running ahead on the trail, Sophia stopping every 10 minutes to take photographs, all three of them eating sandwiches at the summit while Emma pointed out cloud shapes. "That one looks like a dragon," Emma said. "I think it looks like a coffee mug," Sophia countered. "You think everything looks like coffee. You have a problem." "I'm aware." Ethan sat between them, looking out at the mountains he'd thought he'd lost forever, and felt Sarah's presence not as absence, but as blessing. She would have liked Sophia, he thought, would have appreciated her terrible skee-ball skills and her weird abstract paintings, and the way she looked at Emma like she hung the moon. That night, after they'd driven home and Emma had gone to bed, Ethan found Sophia standing on his small balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you for today," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You don't have to thank me." "I do. I thought going back there would hurt, but it didn't. Or it did, but in a different way, like healing instead of breaking." Sophia turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I love you. I know we haven't said it yet, and maybe it's too soon, but I can't keep pretending I don't. I love you, Ethan. I love how you are with Emma. I love how you see the world. I love that you made me remember what it feels like to be happy." Ethan's throat tightened. "I love you too. I have for a while now. I was just scared to say it." "What were you scared of?" "That if I said it out loud, something would go wrong. That I'd lose you the way I lost Sarah. That I'd jinx it somehow." "You can't jinx love. It doesn't work like that." Sophia kissed him softly. "We're going to be okay. All three of us. I promise." He wanted to believe her, and for the first time in years, he actually did. October brought the company's annual gala, a black tie fundraiser that Sophia insisted Ethan attend as her date. He'd never been to anything that formal before, and the idea of wearing a tuxedo and making small talk with investors made him want to fake the flu. "You'll be fine," Sophia assured him. "Just stand next to me and look handsome. I'll do all the talking." "I don't even own a tuxedo." "We'll rent one. Emma can help you pick it out." Emma was thrilled at the prospect of helping her father dress for a fancy party. She dragged him to the rental shop and made him try on 4 different styles before declaring one perfect, but you need new shoes too. The night of the gala, Mrs. Chen came over to stay with Emma while Ethan got ready. He felt ridiculous in the tuxedo, like a kid playing dress-up, but when Emma saw him, her face lit up. "Dad, you look like a movie star." "I look like someone who doesn't know how to tie a bow tie." "Here, let me." Emma stood on a chair and fixed his tie with surprising competence. "There, now, you're perfect." "When did you learn to tie a bow tie?" "YouTube. I looked it up yesterday because I knew you'd need help." She hopped down from the chair. "Are you nervous?" "A little. I'm not good at fancy parties." "Just pretend you're at the pizza place, except with better food and no skee-ball." Ethan laughed. "That's actually pretty good advice." He picked up Sophia at 7. She answered the door in a midnight blue gown that made her look like something out of a dream, and for a second all Ethan could do was stare. "You're staring," Sophia said, smiling. "You're beautiful." "You're not so bad yourself. Emma did a good job with your tie." "How did you know Emma did it?" "Because it's perfect, and you would have given up and worn a clip-on." She grabbed her wrap. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." The gala was held at the Denver Art Museum, the same museum where Ethan and Emma had spent that afternoon looking at Impressionist paintings months ago. It felt fitting somehow, coming full circle to a place that had become important to both of them. Inside, the museum had been transformed. The main hall was filled with tables covered in white linens, floral centerpieces that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, and enough champagne glasses to supply a small country. A string quartet played in the corner. People in expensive clothes milled around, making the kind of polite conversation that sounded warm but meant nothing. Sophia took his hand. "Stick with me. I'll introduce you to people, we'll eat some overpriced food, I'll give a speech, and then we can leave early and get burgers." "You had me at burgers." She introduced him to what felt like 100 people, investors, board members, city officials, other CEOs. Ethan shook hands and smiled and tried to remember names he'd forget within 5 minutes. A few people asked about the city council hearing, calling him the man who saved the Riverside Project, which made him deeply uncomfortable. "I just did my job," he kept saying. He's modest, Sophia would add. He did a lot more than that. Dinner was served, some kind of chicken with a sauce Ethan couldn't identify, vegetables arranged in a way that suggested someone had spent too much time thinking about it. He was halfway through his meal when someone tapped a microphone at the front of the room. The board chairman gave a speech thanking everyone for coming and supporting Bennett Development's work. Then he introduced Sophia, and she walked to the podium looking calm and confident and completely in her element. "Good evening," she said, and the room quieted. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This year has been one of challenges and triumphs for Bennett Development. We faced opposition, doubt, and a few people who thought we'd fail." She paused, and Ethan saw a flicker of emotion cross her face. "But we didn't fail. We fought back. We proved that integrity and persistence still matter in this business. And we did it because we had people who believed in us, our investors, our employees, and our partners." Her eyes found Ethan in the crowd. "One of those people is here tonight." Ethan Cole, our executive director of development, spent 16 hours in a conference room with me, building the defense that saved the Riverside project. He could have gone home to his daughter. He could have said it wasn't his problem, but he didn't. He stayed. He fought. And because of him, we're about to build something that will change this city. The room applauded, and Ethan felt his face burning. Sophia smiled at him, and he saw everything in that smile: love and gratitude and a promise of more to come. She finished her speech talking about the future of the company and the importance of community development. When she returned to their table, she leaned over and whispered, "Still want those burgers?" Desperately. They stayed another hour, long enough to be polite, then slipped out a side entrance. Sophia kicked off her heels in the car, and Ethan loosened his bow tie, and they drove to a diner near Ethan's apartment that was open 24 hours. The contrast was jarring, from champagne and string quartets to fluorescent lights and cracked vinyl booths, but it was perfect. They ordered burgers and fries and milkshakes, and Sophia looked more relaxed than she had all night. "I hate those events," she admitted. "You're good at them, though." "I've had practice. My father dragged me to every fundraiser and gala from the time I was 16. Taught me how to work a room, how to remember names, how to make small talk with people I didn't like." She dragged a fry through ketchup. "But it's exhausting, pretending to be someone I'm not." "Who are you pretending to be?" "The perfect CEO. The person who has it all figured out. The one who never doubts herself or makes mistakes." Sophia looked at him. "You're the only person who knows I'm not that person, that I'm just winging it most of the time. You're doing a pretty good job of winging it. Thanks to you." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I meant what I said in the speech. You saved me. Not just the company, me. I think we saved each other." "Maybe we did." They finished their burgers and drove back to Ethan's apartment. Emma was asleep on the couch, Mrs. Chen dozing in the armchair. Ethan paid her and sent her home, then carried Emma to her bed. When he came back to the living room, Sophia was standing by the window, still in her gown, looking out at the quiet street. "I should go," she said. "Let you get some sleep. Or you could stay." She turned, surprised. "Emma's here." "I know, but we're together, Sophia. Really together. And I don't want to keep pretending we're not. If you stay, you sleep in my room. In the morning, we have breakfast with Emma, like a normal couple." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Ethan crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her. "I love you. Emma loves you. This is our life now. Let's stop hiding it." Sophia kissed him, and he felt her smile against his lips. "Okay, I'll stay." The next morning, Emma wandered into the kitchen in her pajamas and found Sophia making pancakes while Ethan brewed coffee. She stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. Then she grinned. "Does this mean Sophia's moving in?" "Not yet," Ethan said, "but maybe someday." "Cool. Can she teach me to make pancakes like that? Yours are always lumpy." Sophia laughed. "It would be my pleasure." Emma climbed onto a stool at the counter, and Sophia showed her how to flip pancakes without making a mess. Ethan watched them, his girlfriend and his daughter, working together like they'd done this 100 times before. This was it, he realized. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for. Not perfect, not without complications, but real and good, and filled with the kind of happiness he'd thought was gone forever. He poured coffee, set the table, and joined them. And for the first time in 3 years, the future didn't look like something to survive. It looked like something worth living. The following spring arrived with the kind of warmth that made Denver feel like a different city entirely. Trees bloomed along the streets, the mountains lost their snow caps, and the Riverside Project rose from the ground in stages that felt almost miraculous to watch. Steel frames stretched toward the sky where empty lots had been. Concrete walls took shape. Glass panels caught the sunlight. It was becoming real. Ethan stood on the construction site on a Tuesday morning in early May, hard hat on his head, clipboard in hand, watching a crane lift a massive beam into place. A year ago, this had been nothing but dirt and blueprints, and Sophia's desperate hope that they could pull it off. Now it was actually happening. "Looking good," Marcus said, coming up beside him. "We're actually ahead of schedule. When's the last time that happened?" "Never, in my experience." "Mine either. You must be doing something right." Marcus grinned. "How's the family?" Ethan had stopped correcting people when they called Sophia and Emma his family, because that's what they were now, even if the paperwork hadn't caught up with the reality. "Good. Emma's got a piano recital tonight. Sophia's been helping her practice." "Sophia plays piano?" "No, but she sits there and listens while Emma plays the same song 17 times in a row. I think that counts for more." Marcus laughed. "You're a lucky man." "I know." Later that afternoon, Ethan left the construction site early to make it to Emma's school in time for the recital. Sophia was already there, sitting in the third row, saving him a seat. She was wearing a work suit, clearly having come straight from the office, but she'd loosened her collar and looked more relaxed than she would have a year ago. "You made it," she said when he slid into the seat next to her. "Barely. Traffic was terrible." Ethan kissed her cheek. "Is she nervous?" "She says she's not, but I saw her practicing her breathing exercises backstage." Sophia smiled. "She's going to be great." The recital started with the younger kids fumbling their way through simple songs. Then it was Emma's turn. She walked onto the stage in the blue dress Sophia had helped her pick out, sat at the piano, and took a deep breath. For a second, she looked so small up there, so vulnerable. Then her hands touched the keys, and the first notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the auditorium. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Emma had been working on this piece for 3 months, struggling with the more complex passages, sometimes getting so frustrated she wanted to quit. But Sophia had sat with her night after night, encouraging her to try again, reminding her that the hard things were worth doing. Now, listening to his daughter play with confidence and grace, Ethan realized something he'd been too scared to acknowledge before. They weren't just dating anymore. They weren't just figuring things out. They were building a life together, the three of them. And it was working. Messy and imperfect and sometimes complicated, but working. When Emma finished, the applause was thunderous. She stood up and bowed, her face glowing with pride. Her eyes found Ethan and Sophia in the audience, and she grinned so wide it looked like her face might split in half. After the recital, they took Emma out for ice cream to celebrate. She talked nonstop about the performance, about the part she'd gotten right, and the one note she'd fumbled but didn't think anyone had noticed. "I noticed," Sophia said, completely serious. "But I also noticed that you recovered perfectly and kept going. That's what professionals do." Emma beamed. "Really? Really? You were incredible up there." Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Ethan and Sophia sat on his balcony with glasses of wine, looking out at the city lights. It was a ritual they'd developed over the past few months, this quiet time after the chaos of the day, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. "I've been thinking," Sophia said. "That sounds dangerous." She nudged him with her shoulder. "I'm serious. I've been thinking about us, about where we're going." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Okay. My lease is up in 2 months, and I've been looking at my apartment, at how much space I'm not using, and I keep thinking—" She paused. "What if I didn't renew it?" "You want to move somewhere smaller?" "I want to move here, with you and Emma, if you'll have me." Ethan set down his wine glass, his heart pounding. "You want to move in?" "I know it's a big step, and I know we should probably talk about it more, make sure we're ready. But Ethan, I'm already here most nights. My toothbrush is in your bathroom. Half my clothes are in your closet. Emma and I cook together. We have movie nights. I help her with homework. This already feels like home. I just want to make it official. What about Emma? Have you talked to her about this? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, but I think she'd be okay with it. She asked me last week if I was ever going to move in or if I was going to keep visiting forever. Her words, not mine. Ethan laughed, but it came out shaky. Yes, obviously yes, but are you sure? Living with a 7-year-old isn't easy. There's noise and mess and schedules and I know. I've been living it for months now, remember? I know what I'm signing up for. Sophia took his hand. I love you. I love Emma. I want to wake up here every morning. I want to be part of this family, not just a visitor. Tell me you want that too. I do. I've wanted it for a while. I was just scared to ask. Why? Because what if you said no? What if you realized you liked your space, your independence? What if moving in together changed everything? It will change everything, Sophia said. That's the point. I don't want to keep living alone in that big empty apartment, pretending I'm fine. I want this. The chaos and the noise and Emma leaving her art projects on the kitchen table. I want all of it. Ethan pulled her close, kissing her like they were the only two people in the world. Then let's do it. Let's tell Emma tomorrow. They told her the next morning over breakfast. Emma looked up from her cereal, eyes wide. You're moving in? Like, for real? All the time? If that's okay with you, Sophia said. This is your home too. We wouldn't do this if you weren't comfortable with it. Emma considered this for about 3 seconds. Then she launched herself at Sophia, nearly knocking her off her chair. Yes! Can I help you decorate your room? Can we paint it? Can we get new furniture? Sophia laughed, hugging her back. We can do whatever you want. It's our home now. All of us. The move happened gradually over the next 2 months. Sophia didn't have much. Most of her furniture was expensive but impersonal. The kind of stuff that looked good in a showroom but didn't feel like home. She sold most of it, keeping only a few pieces that mattered. Her father's desk, a painting her mother had loved, the piano she'd learned to play on as a child, which they somehow managed to fit in the living room and which Emma immediately claimed as hers. I'll share it, Emma said generously, but I get priority practice time. Deal, Sophia agreed. By July, it was done. Sophia's apartment was empty, her lease terminated, and all her belongings were integrated into Ethan's place, which now felt like theirs. They'd painted the bedroom, rearranged the furniture, hung new curtains. Emma had insisted on a family photo wall in the hallway. Pictures of the three of them at museums and parks and construction sites, mixed in with older photos of Sarah that Ethan had kept in boxes for years. She's part of our family too, Emma had said when Sophia questioned whether it was okay. Just because she's gone doesn't mean we forget her. Sophia had hugged Emma and cried, and Ethan had loved her even more for understanding what his daughter needed. The Riverside project continued to rise. By August, the first residential tower was nearly complete. The commercial spaces were taking shape. The public parks were being landscaped. City officials came for tours, investors scheduled walkthroughs, and reporters wrote articles about Denver's newest landmark development. Ethan gave interviews he didn't want to give, always deflecting credit back to Sophia and the team, but people kept calling him the hero of the project, the man who'd saved it from destruction. He hated the attention, but Sophia seemed to glow every time someone mentioned his name. You deserve the recognition, she told him after one particularly exhausting interview. You're the reason any of this exists. We're the reason, together. Together, she agreed. In September, on a Saturday afternoon that felt like summer refusing to let go, Ethan took Sophia and Emma hiking back to Rocky Mountain National Park. They'd been several times over the past year, but this time felt different. He had a plan. They hiked to the same summit where they'd eaten sandwiches a year ago, where Ethan had made peace with his past and started believing in his future. The view was just as stunning, mountains stretching endlessly in every direction, sky so blue it hurt to look at. Emma ran ahead to the overlook, pointing out birds and rock formations. Sophia stood next to Ethan, her hand in his, breathing in the mountain air. I love it up here, she said. It feels like the world makes sense. Yeah, it does. Ethan's heart was pounding. He'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times in his head, but now that it was here, All his practiced words disappeared. Emma came running back. Dad, can we eat lunch now? I'm starving. Actually, I need to do something first. Ethan looked at Sophia, who was watching him with curiosity. Emma, you remember what we talked about last week? Emma's eyes went wide with excitement. Oh, yes. Should I do it now? Do what? Sophia asked. Emma reached into her backpack and pulled out a small velvet box, handing it to Ethan with a grin so big it looked painful. We've been planning this for weeks. I helped pick it out and everything. Ethan took the box, and his hands were shaking as he turned to face Sophia fully. Her expression had gone from confused to shocked to something that looked like hope, all in the space of a second. Sophia Bennett, he said, his voice rough. A year and a half ago, you called me into your office in the middle of the night because you were terrified and needed help. I had no idea that helping you would change my entire life, that you would change my life. Sophia's eyes were already bright with tears. You made me remember what it felt like to be alive again, to care about something more than just surviving. You loved my daughter like she was your own. You fit into our messy, complicated life and made it better just by being in it. He dropped to one knee, opening the box to reveal a simple diamond ring. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a family with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know that we chose this. We chose each other. Will you marry me? Sophia covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. For a long, terrible moment, she didn't say anything, and Ethan's heart stopped. Then she nodded, the movement almost violent. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. Ethan stood up and slid the ring onto her finger, and then she was in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. Emma cheered and jumped up and down, then crashed into both of them, creating a three-person hug that nearly knocked them all over. I can't believe you kept this a secret, Sophia said to Emma, wiping her eyes. It was so hard. I wanted to tell you every day, but Dad said it had to be a surprise. It was a perfect surprise. Sophia looked at Ethan, her expression so full of love it made his chest ache. Thank you for choosing me, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for staying, Ethan said, for fighting with me in that conference room, for giving me a reason to hope again. They ate lunch on the summit, Emma chattering about wedding plans while Sophia kept looking at her ring like she couldn't quite believe it was real. On the hike back down, Emma walked ahead again, giving them space. Are you happy? Ethan asked Sophia. Happier than I knew I could be. She squeezed his hand. Are you? Yeah, really am. The wedding happened in November. A small ceremony at the Denver Botanic Gardens with just close friends and family. Emma was the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. Marcus was Ethan's best man, giving a speech that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Sophia's mother flew in from Boston, and Ethan's parents drove up from Colorado Springs, and everyone agreed it was the most beautiful wedding they'd ever seen. But Ethan barely noticed the flowers or the music or the guests. All he could see was Sophia, standing across from him in a simple white dress, promising to love him and Emma for the rest of their lives. I take you as you are, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. With all your history and your heart and your beautiful daughter, I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your family. In success and struggle, in joy and grief, for as long as we both live. Ethan's vows were shorter, his voice breaking halfway through. You saved me. Not just my career or my confidence, but my capacity to believe that good things could still happen. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that you made the right choice. When they kissed, Emma cheered louder than anyone. The reception was held at the museum where they'd had their first official date as a couple, the same place where Sophia had given that speech at the gala a year ago. They danced to a song that Emma had helped them choose. They cut a cake that was too sweet, but no one cared. They laughed with friends and posed for photos and stayed up too late drinking champagne. At the end of the night, the three of them went home together, to their apartment, their family, their life. Emma fell asleep on the couch, still wearing her flower girl dress, exhausted and happy. Ethan carried her to bed while Sophia changed into comfortable clothes. We did it, Sophia said when he came back to the bedroom. We actually got married. Having regrets already? Not even one. She pulled him onto the bed, curling against his side. I keep thinking about that night in the conference room, how terrified I was, how convinced I was that everything was falling apart. It was falling apart, but you helped me put it back together. And now look at us. We built something better than what we had before. Ethan kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. You know what I realized today? What? I used to think happiness was something that happened to you, like luck or good weather, something you couldn't control, but it's not. It's something you build. Piece by piece, choice by choice. You choose to show up. You choose to try. You choose to let people in even when it's scary. When did you get so wise? I have a very smart wife. Some of it must be rubbing off. Sophia laughed, the sound soft in the quiet room. I love you, Ethan Cole. I love you too. The Riverside Project officially opened the following spring, 15 months after breaking ground. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew hundreds of people, city officials, investors, future tenants, curious residents. Sophia gave a speech about vision and persistence and the importance of community development. She thanked the team, the contractors, the city council. And then she thanked Ethan, who stood in the crowd holding Emma's hand, trying not to look embarrassed. None of this would exist without him, Sophia said, gesturing to the gleaming towers behind her. He believed in this project when others wanted to destroy it. He fought for it. He saved it. This is his victory as much as it is ours. The crowd applauded, and Emma squeezed Ethan's hand. She's talking about you, Dad. I know. You're kind of famous now. I'm really not. But in a way, he supposed he was. Not celebrity famous, but Denver famous. The man who'd helped save the Riverside Project, the executive who'd stood up to Victor Langford and won, the single father who'd found love again and built a family out of broken pieces. After the ceremony, they walked through the completed development, the residential towers with their modern apartments, the commercial spaces already filling with shops and restaurants, the public parks where children were already playing. It was everything they'd fought for, made real. What do you think? Sophia asked Emma. I think it's pretty cool that you guys built this, like you made something that wasn't there before. That's kind of magic. It is kind of magic, Sophia agreed, looking at Ethan. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Ethan and Sophia sat on their balcony now, in the apartment they shared, in the life they'd built together. The Riverside Towers were visible in the distance, lit up against the night sky. Do you ever think about that night? Sophia asked. In the conference room? All the time. What do you think about? Ethan considered the question. I think about how scared I was. Not of the hearing or Victor or losing the project. I was scared of feeling something again, of letting myself care about you, of risking my heart after I'd worked so hard to protect it. And now? Now I know that protecting your heart isn't the same as keeping it safe. Safe means walls and distance and never letting anyone close enough to hurt you. But that's not living. That's just existing. He turned to look at her. You taught me that. You and Emma. You taught me that love isn't something to be afraid of. It's something to choose, over and over, even when it's hard. Sophia's eyes were bright in the darkness. I was so lonely before I met you. I told myself I was fine, that I didn't need anyone, that the company was enough. But it wasn't. I was drowning, and I didn't even realize it until you threw me a lifeline. We threw each other a lifeline. Yeah, we did. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city breathe below them. Somewhere out there, Victor Langford was probably still bitter about losing. The city council was probably planning their next development battle. Life was continuing, messy and complicated and full of challenges yet to come. But sitting here, with Sophia's hand in his and Emma asleep in her room and the Riverside Towers standing tall in the distance, Ethan felt something he'd thought was gone forever. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. The knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do, with exactly the people he was meant to be with. 3 years ago, he'd been a man barely surviving, focused only on making it through each day for his daughter's sake. He'd thought that was enough, that survival was the best he could hope for. But he'd been wrong, because life wasn't meant to be survived. It was meant to be lived, fully, messily, with all the risk and reward that came with opening yourself up to possibility. He'd learned that in a conference room during 16 hours of desperate work. He'd learned it watching his daughter play piano and his wife give speeches, and the Riverside Project rise from nothing into something magnificent. He'd learned that love wasn't something you found once and lost forever. It was something you could find again, in different forms, with different people, if you were brave enough to let it in. He'd learned that grief didn't disappear when you moved forward. It just made room for other things, joy and hope and new chapters written on top of old scars. Most importantly, he had learned that happiness wasn't something that happened to you. It was something you built, one choice at a time, one day at a time, with the people who mattered most. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked. Ethan smiled. "I'm thinking that I'm glad you called me into your office that night. I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad we fought together and won together and built all of this together." "Me too. And I'm thinking that Emma was right. What we did, building the Riverside Project, building our family, it really is kind of magic." Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder. "The best kind of magic, the kind we made ourselves." Inside the apartment, Emma stirred in her sleep, probably dreaming about impressionist paintings or piano recitals or whatever else filled the mind of an 8-year-old girl who was loved beyond measure. The city hummed below them, full of other people fighting their own battles, building their own lives, making their own magic. And Ethan Cole, who had once been a widower barely holding his life together, sat on a balcony with his wife and felt something he'd almost forgotten existed: gratitude. Not for the absence of pain or the erasure of loss, but for the presence of new love, for second chances, for the opportunity to show his daughter that grief didn't have to be the end of the story, that sometimes, if you were brave enough and patient enough and willing enough to risk your heart one more time, you could find your way back to living. Not survival, living. And that made all the difference.